You guys have been telling me for 3 years, just get bigger. I have put on 15 pounds every time you've seen me. To get any bigger, I'm going to have to take so much that the minute you sign me and drug test me, I'm going to deflate, and then you're not going to get what you hired. Ben was talking about biomechanics. It was the first exposure I had, and that a lot of people had, to do this way, but also take your balls out of your purse and do it.
Time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Drew Donaldson, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to start with a quote that I found of yours, which will be a good jumping off point.
Oh boy.
I am a former professional wrestler turned self-proclaimed fitness nerd, which means I have been beat up and confused for the past 3 decades. Elaborate.
I have a fairly interesting backstory, and I didn't realize that until I started my own podcast, because people would ask me, or I'd have an episode that just mandated talking about my story a little bit. And I've just been living it, man. So I never really stopped to think that it's unique. Like, I can acknowledge that it's different than a lot of the paths that a lot of people take, not just in the fitness industry, but in life in general. But I've actually just started to embrace it the past couple of years, because I always kind of thought it wasn't about me, so I need to pay attention to everything going around me. I was very much a stay quiet in the background and just absorb information type. And then I became a little bit more of a source of information for people, not just a coach, but an educator, I suppose. And then people would ask me more questions about me and how I got to where I'm at right now. And I'm not social media famous. I'm not fitness industry famous, or whatever that might mean or entail. But I have this ability to reach more people now, and it's ended up in a position where I talk about myself a little bit more, and I do more appearances like this, and which is a complete blessing and a huge opportunity. So thank you again for having me. But I'm still getting used to talking about my story. But essentially, I grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I wasn't a particularly athletic kid, and I wasn't a particularly smart kid. So I was an average student at best. Probably below that. I had to struggle to get my C pluses to remain average.
Any sports?
I played football, but I didn't get to play football. You know, one of those. I was on the football team. I was there. I had a uniform, but didn't play that much. Played baseball, but again, didn't play much baseball. It was just, I did the things that an athletic kid in the suburbs outside of Boston did, but I didn't really excel at any of them. And growing up, I was a bit of a nerd, but I was always kind of social in that I could just talk to people. Like, I had no problem just sitting down and having a conversation with anybody. So I was in every single crowd in high school. I was friends with the football guys, obviously, but I was friends with like the metalheads and the burnouts. And, you know, basically I partied, and then I tried to study, and then I went out with this crowd. I hung out with that crowd. But at the end of the day, like, I'm an introvert. So I wanted to be home at the end of the day. I wanted to be basically reading comic books when I was a kid. And comic books were kind of my thing. If you want to like psychoanalyze, I'm sure it has something to do with lack of a father figure, or overbearing mother, grandparent, or whatever the fuck it might be. I'm sure there's something that led to that. But comic books were like an obsession. Then I got a little bit older. Then I became a little bit more aware of women. So I became less aware of comic books. But somewhere along the line, professional wrestling was exploding.
How did you see the training for football?
So I didn't. I just wasn't. I was a kid that just did regular athletics. So
They didn't have weight training like as part of...
we had the weight room, but I mean, so I went to Algonquin Regional High School in Northborough, Massachusetts. And I just say that because nobody that didn't go there is going to know what that is. So not a school known for athletics, nothing, no accolades, really nothing.
Rural?
So what's that?
A rural area?
Very, very much so. So we're talking about 35 minutes outside of Boston, so in the boondocks of Massachusetts. So I just didn't have exposure to really anything athletic at a high level. I loved my comic books. Then I saw professional wrestling, and then I thought, well, these are kind of like comic book characters, but it's real life. That's my shit. That's what I'm going to do. So I started telling people from like 13 years on that I'm going to be a pro wrestler. And of course, you say that as a kid, and people are just going, oh, okay, cool, whatever. But then it got to the point where it was time to go to college, and I don't know how I even got into college, but I managed to go to a fairly decent school. I went to Colby Sawyer College in New London, New Hampshire, and I studied exercise science. And the only reason I did that was because I knew I wanted to be a professional wrestler at that point in time.
Well, let's back up a minute, because you've been in this industry for a while, so you know where I'm coming from. But a lot of the attributes that we develop for sports and wrestling, like you're not going to, this is where my brain's like, what? Like you're not going to be able to excel in wrestling if you don't have some base of athletic development, which is formed as we're kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the coordination, the flexibility, visual acuity, all these type of things. So it's, you had to do more than just read comic books. I mean, were you outside playing when you were younger? Like,
oh yeah, yeah. No, I was running around. I was outside. This is before the internet, so
Yeah.
it's like I lived outside, and I was doing athletic things, but I had no athletic gifts.
Okay. Oh, that's where I was going, because you'll see this, and I'm sure you've seen it because you got over probably 15,000 hours of real personal training now, that if you get certain kids past a certain age, it's really, really hard
Mm-hmm.
for certain development components
Mm-hmm.
and coordination. You can make it better, but if they didn't do the things when they were in that 4 to 8 year age or whatever the hell it is,
Mm-hmm.
you're really, really kind of struggling.
Well, that's the thing. I really was that kid because I did struggle. Because when I was 19 years old, I found a professional wrestling school. So I technically found several. And this was back when I had a Yahoo email account. So I'll date myself there. And I just emailed every school within 50 miles of where I
How'd
was
you
going to
find them?
college. Like literally like Lycos and Yahoo searches.
Okay.
So, again, we're
Yeah.
going early 2000s here.
Mhm.
So the first one that emailed me back was a school called Slam Tech in right outside of Providence, Rhode Island, Pawtucket, I believe. And it was like a 2.5 hour drive from where I went to college. But he was the first one that emailed me back. His name was Brutal Bob Evans, local independent legend there, not the restaurant Bob Evans, the guy, but you can Google him. He's popular enough in that world, very smart guy. And he was a student of the original Killer Kowalski class. So I showed up there and he said, all right, kid, you got a good frame on you. You're 6 feet tall, but you got to build some muscle. This is a very cosmetic industry and it's a very athletic industry. So the day I started training, the day I started training. So I started professional wrestling training, and then I went to the gym regularly for the first time. Now I'd been to the gym before, but I decided I was just going to go to the gym, and then I never missed a workout really ever again.
Now, did you relocate there?
So I commuted there. So I didn't have a car in college, which made it kind of tough. So I intentionally dated a young lady that had a car with good gas mileage. And then I told her that I was driving to Manchester 3 days per week, which was only about 30 minutes away. And I didn't stop to think that her parents would probably check the mileage on the car because I was really driving 5 hours round trip to Rhode Island and back 3 days per week.
Mm-hmm.
But never really heard anything about it after the fact, but really haven't heard from her after the fact, and that might be why. But I majored in exercise science because I figured that's the closest thing I have to majoring in pro wrestling. Didn't really care about college, but my family wanted me to go. And I didn't realize how much money I was hemorrhaging on student loans going there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning exercise science. I got my first job as a personal trainer like the same month that I started working out, which is ludicrous. I get that. But as part of the exercise science program, you could work as a personal trainer or an apprentice personal trainer in the gym on campus. So I started doing that. I started collecting personal training certifications, and I just started absorbing as much content as humanly possible. And back then it was professional muscle, intense muscle, the boards, the message boards, the forums that we were talking about before we started recording. And I just lurked because I knew that I wasn't at the level of being able to contribute at that point in time. So I just read everything. I bought every book I could get my hands on. And then as my professional wrestling career would progress, I would learn more skills and adapt. Because again, I wasn't athletic.
Did you stay with the same girl the whole time?
About 2 years.
All right. Well, that made me laugh because I kind of did the same thing where when I went to several universities, but the first one I could walk, to the gym because it was far enough away. The second one, they had a gym associated with the university, but it sucked. Mm-hmm. Especially for a competitive powerlifter, it sucked. So I had two routes. I had another bouncer that trained in the gym that I wanted to go to that would take me, or I would borrow my girlfriend's car, and it kind of became a little bit of a vetting process to be able to figure out who I was going to take.
Who's got the best mileage?
It was like, yes, because I didn't have a vehicle, but I wasn't able to get a vehicle until I was 21 because of stupid shit that I did when I was younger. So I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, but it plays into your passion for the wrestling because you figure it out.
Mhm.
Like I was going to figure out a way,
Yeah.
no matter what it was, to get to wherever I was in Perrysburg, Ohio. Gym was in Maumee. So 30 minutes away. I was going to figure a way out,
Right.
you know, and I always did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the same thing is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, if we're just to lean into that a little bit, because it reoccurs, you know, as we kind of go through your origin story to where you are now.
Right.
Where do you think that base came from?
Honestly, for whatever reason, I have always clung on to what I called my earliest positive trait, and that's being stubborn as fuck. So again, once I cling on to something, once I decide this is where I'm going to go there, even if I have to scratch and claw my way there. So I know everybody has the nothing ever came easy to me type story, one way or another, because nothing comes really easy to anybody, let's be real. Even the most gifted athletes in the world, you have to fight and claw for stuff that's important. But I feel like I had an uphill battle, and I never got mad about that. I don't even know if I realized it half the time, but I was just tunnel vision on my goal at all times.
Was it stubborn as far as a drive of stubborn as is I'm going to do this, or stubborn as kind of like anti-authority?
Early on, probably both. So it was probably a mix of I'm going to achieve this no matter what. And it was probably fueled by everybody telling me that that's not what you're supposed to do, because you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get a degree, you're supposed to enter the workforce. And even if you have a wild dream, it's definitely not supposed to be a fucking pro wrestler for the WWE. That's insane, especially when I'm 6 feet tall on a good day. And I did not look like an athlete, nor was I an athlete. I was a guy that eventually looked like he kind of went to the gym, but that was about it early on. So into my early 20s, because I had no money. I eventually left college, and I was living out of my car for a little while, and I was chasing independent wrestling shows for money, working at a Gold's Gym in Westboro, Massachusetts, and a Boston Sports Club in Natick, and they had a no-compete clause, so I had to lie and go back and forth and train clients. And then I would pick up independent clients, but I didn't know anything about business, so I was hemorrhaging money and chasing pro wrestling. But along the line, I would always find people to kind of cling on to that I could learn from. My whole thing was I always wanted to be the dumbest person in every room, and I knew that with wrestling, I was going to pick up eventually, because no matter what, I'm going to learn all these moves. I'm going to learn the psychology of a match. I'm going to learn how to emote. I'm going to learn how to talk. And the talking came easy for me early on, so I leaned onto that. I'll be a character. I'll be entertaining. I can entertain whoever, especially at that point in my life. But then I had to piece together the look, because I knew that no matter what, if I looked like an average guy and I was a really good wrestler, even if I could talk really well too, I had an okay chance of making it. But if I had all of those positives and I also looked like a bodybuilder and moved like an athlete, I'd be undeniable. So that's when I just started diving into more and more content. So that was the stage of my life where I found stuff like your content at the time, where I found elitefts, where I found people like Mark Bell, where I found people like John Meadows. And I started absorbing as much of that as humanly possible. And I'd try to learn, okay, this is the training. Let me learn the training. Okay, I've got a couple extra bucks now. Let me get another personal training certification. Let me go get ISSA. All right, let me get ACE. All right, cool. Now there's another John Meadows video. Let me watch that. Oh, cool. He's got a pay site now. Can I afford $10 a month? I don't even know, but whatever. Let me just pay it anyways. Let me sign up for this and let me pull all of this information in. I got a couple more bucks. I was able to hire coaches. Now, coaches weren't really a big thing. That's relatively new. Now there's a billion coaches for every facet of fitness. But back then, I remember I was reading a muscular development magazine, and I saw Fakhri Mubarak, bodybuilder up in New York, was like, I'm a bodybuilding coach. What's that? That means you pay me $200 a month and I tell you what to do and what drugs to take. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know anything about drugs. This is probably a good idea for me. Emailed him and just, okay, cool. I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. Hey, can you tell me how all this works? No, it just works. No disrespect for him. He's a smart guy, but that was his business model at the time. Okay, cool. So just started pinning stuff, training, and I got a little bit bigger. It wasn't the best program for me, so I didn't look amazing. So then I would move around a little bit. And I told all these guys, I want to work with you for like 6 months, work with you for a year, but I want to learn as much as I can. So I'm trying to learn from as many people as possible. So I ended up working with him. I ended up working with Dave Palumbo for about a year. And that was fantastic at the time as well, because it was building the foundation from people that had been there. And in the meantime, I was absorbing all this content. And then inevitably, like I had moved from Boston to Louisville, Kentucky, because WWE had a developmental school there, which is basically their farm league league. So I went in as a walk-on. I remember I called their coach, do you accept non-contracted talent? And I remember Rip Rogers, old-time wrestler, like old school mentality. He just said, if you can be here on Monday for an interview, I'll consider taking you in my class even without a contract. And I was like, it's Saturday. And he goes, yep. And then he hung up the phone. So I went, fuck. So I called a buddy that I knew would go also. I said, you want to go to Kentucky? He said, yep. Got in the car, drove there, walked in on Monday morning. And he's like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, I'm Drew. I called you the other day. I didn't think you were going to come. All right, if you move here, I'll train you. Well, okay. So 3 weeks later, I lived in Kentucky for 6 months. So trained there, had an opportunity to go back to Boston because I had a friend that had made it to the office with WWE that said, hey, I'm doing these clinics and camps in New England. If you come back, you're one of my guys. I'll do what I can for you. That was Mike Bucci, worked as Simon Dean in WWE, Nova, and ECW. Probably the biggest inspiration of my career, and also one of the biggest inspirations in that he was a fitness guy. And he was like, kid, you look pretty good. You're putting on some size, but you got to be impressive. Like you got to really, you got to bring this up a little bit. I'm like, well, Mike, what can I do to really make it? And I'm looking for like profound advice. And he just goes, 2 cc's a test and 2 a deca.
What was your size at this time?
This time I was probably like 215, maybe like 15% body fat. So
And how would you describe your weight room training? So let's forget about the ring and the skills. How would you describe that at this point?
heavy compound lifts and then bodybuilding sprinkled in on top of that. Because at this point in time, I had my specific training from my certifications. I think by that time I had like your typical like NASM, ISSA, ACE. So it's like I knew like frontal and sagittal plane, and I knew like what a Bosu ball was, but I also knew that that stuff didn't necessarily equate to me being the biggest, baddest motherfucker on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was diving into working with primarily bodybuilding coaches, because that's all I knew of at that time. And I was getting bigger and I was working my way there. And then it got to the point where Mike was getting me booked for these extra spots with WWE. And every time I would go, it would just be like, oh, you're pretty good, but you don't really stand out.
So how was your ring performance before the PED? So say you're 200 and you up to 220, right? So during that developmental phase while you're getting a little jacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was that correspondence to your movement ability?
So luckily, I was learning how to move as I was growing. So it wasn't a situation where I blew up in size and had to adapt to this new body weight.
Yes.
How to move around it. I was perfecting, well, not far from perfecting. I was learning appropriate or proper training while I was training and becoming a better wrestler, while I was learning about and taking PEDs. And then, experiencing, I'll take growth, I'll take insulin, I'll utilize these other things. So it was a very gradual one lever at a time process for me, but everything coincided perfectly. So I was becoming a better athlete. Because remember, I was practicing my sport while doing my training. There was no like GPP and then getting into my actual like season or anything like that. I was trying to get big and strong, and I was also in season 24/7.
Well, it sounds like at that time though, before the PEDs, you still had 2 to 4 years, of serious training, right? So you're past the beginner gains, right? So you're at this other phase, and now this next jump, like 220, what'd you end up like 260, 270, something like that,
mm-hmm.
faster than, so you put on 50 pounds, say within a year,
mm-hmm.
right? And what impact did that have, especially with the stronger ones? I mean, are you getting winded? Is that coming faster? Because it's, as you go through, man, I don't know how you were exposed. This is a better question, because it depends who you're exposed to, right? When it comes to adding these things in, to where it can be added in appropriately and you're not going to be getting gassed, right? It can be added in ridiculously or suggested appropriately, then you do it ridiculously, and then you find that you're gassed.
Right.
I'm assuming you ran into that issue, because everybody I basically know does.
So there were times when it was definitely like, oh man, I'm getting a little heavy. This is getting a little rough. But just because it was a very gradual process, not for lack of trying, it was just, all right, maybe the diet didn't match up to the PEDs, maybe the training stimulus wasn't there, but it took a long time for me. I was not a hyper responder, more than likely because I wasn't just doing everything right, so it added up. But the entire time, throughout my entire 20s, I was training in the ring 4 or 5 days a week. So after that initial 3 days a week to learn the ropes, so to speak, I was in school Monday through Friday if I wasn't at a show, and I was doing 2, 3, 4 shows a week, traveling to do them all. So my ring time was constantly there. So I was getting bigger while constantly doing this intensive cardio for hours upon hours per day. So for whatever reason, then mixing that along with being in my 20s and being more resilient because I was younger, it never really started catching me at that point.
Yes.
So what ended up getting me was I was doing all these WWE extra appearances. They bring you into a Monday Night Raw, to a SmackDown, to a pay-per-view, and either they put you in a tryout match, you lose to somebody before the show starts while the fans are still getting to the arena. Maybe you're the security guard that John Cena needs to punch in the face. I've actually done that. But these little things, I did maybe 15, 20 appearances, and it was always like, yeah, you're good, but you don't really stand out. And then eventually I was like, what do I need to do to get a job? And they just kept telling me, just get bigger. Just get bigger. We like you, just get bigger. And it got to the point where I got up to about 260, 265 pounds. And I wasn't quite like a bag of milk with a shirt off, but I wasn't a bodybuilder.
Well, how do you do that? This is what I'm impressed about with the professional wrestlers, right? Mm-hmm. You're broke as fuck. You're traveling all the time. Right, you're probably sleeping in your car, mm-hmm. right? Because you can't afford to get the cheapest hotel, living in your car. And you have to, PEDs obviously work, right? Mm-hmm. You still have to get these meals in, mm-hmm. right? And they're not going to be the healthiest meals mm-hmm. because you need calories and fuel, mm-hmm. right? And so what'd that look like? Like, what's the typical week look like back then?
So back then, it was legitimately like, okay, cool. I know the staples of what I need to eat. And there were times when I was working with the coaches, I would follow a very specific diet. And it was usually a different version of a bulking diet. I would hire bodybuilding coaches because I didn't know any better.
Are you making enough money to even do that?
Oh, barely. So I was scraping by. I could pay the coaches, but then, it'd be like, oh shit, let me go down to the leasing office and try to flirt with the girl to see if she can give me an extra day before she puts the eviction notice up on the door. Mm-hmm. Shit like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Just dumb 20s without a backup plan style stuff. And I could have made more money if I just put more time into personal training, but I had to travel on the weekends to go wrestle. And then, of course, like they don't want you to leave on the weekends if you're working for a corporate gym or whatever it might be. So again, it was just pinching pennies and just, again, being stubborn, making
mm-hmm.
it work. I'm going to make this work no matter what. So the diet itself, when it wasn't being directed by Dave or Fauchery or eventually Scott Stevenson way later when it was really well constructed, not that the other guys didn't construct it well, but that's when I was already at a bit of a higher level. But it was really just, all right, cool. I know I need XYZ amount of carbs. So let me get a bunch of whole wheat pasta because I knew nothing about gluten intolerance mm-hmm. at the time. Let me get a whole lot of rice. Chicken's cheap. I'm just going to boil 2 pounds of chicken every day. I remember I used to blend all the chicken in my Vitamix with chicken broth after I cooked it, and then would drink that in between meals because it was all about like calories, mm-hmm. which is probably why I borderline looked like a bag of milk without a shirt on. But I was big and I was getting bigger, and it got to the point where I went to an extra spot in the American Airlines Arena, at least that's what it was called at the time. I'm not sure what it's called now, in Miami, Florida. And it was a WWE SmackDown. And I went down there and I went into the office. It was John Laurinaitis and Ty Bailey were in charge of talent relations. And I knocked on the door and I was like, do you guys have a minute? And they're like, just wait here. About 2 hours later, they opened the door. What's up? So I go and I was like, hey, you guys have been telling me for 3 years, just get bigger, just get bigger, just get bigger. I have literally put on like 15 pounds every time you've seen me that entire time. I'm 265 right now, and I'll keep getting bigger if you want me to, but there's going to be a point, and I'm just going to be straight with you, to get any bigger, I'm going to have to take so much fucking gear that the minute you sign me and drug test me, I'm going to deflate, and then you're not going to get what you hired. So just telling me to get bigger, it's a little redundant in this.
I've been training for over 4 decades now, and keeping track of all my training metrics has always been a big part of that. It wasn't until later on that I realized that keeping track of your internal metrics are just as important, if not more important, the longer you're in this game. Most primary care physicians, if you go in for any type of issue, they'll look for what's off, but they're not necessarily looking for how to optimize where your labs are for where you want to go. That's where Merrick Health comes in. Merrick Health does advanced blood work with medical providers around the world and a health coach who helps build a plan around your goals. I worked with Merrick to build a custom lab panel for this show. They have guided optimizations that can help you set you up with a health coach to be able to work through what your goals are, from the prescriptions to supplements, just the whole deal. Don't have to do that. You can just do the lab panels. They have options. You can find this at merrickhealth.com/table talk for 10% off your first order. One of the best decisions that I ever made was to partner with Merrick. So I highly suggest you head over to merrickhealth.com/table talk and get started today.
Point. And it kind of caught them off guard because I was kind of pissed. I was like, this is taking so fucking long. I've seen so many guys that I know I'm better than get shots, and it's kind of like a crapshoot. It's very subjective. So I'm like, just what the fuck do you want me to do? So he was like, oh, we'll go down to the pre-tape room with the Brooklyn Brawler who runs the pre-tape room. And if you cut a good promo, I'll give you a job. Okay. And then like literally that was it. I walked down, blah, 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 blah. Like, hey, John said you'd give me a job if I cut a good promo, just interview. And he goes, well, you really think you can do that? And I'm over it at this point. I go, yeah. He goes, well, do you have something prepared? I'm like, will it impress you more if you just tell me a topic and I just do it? He goes, all right, smart guy. You debuted on Monday Night Raw last week, and you have John Cena for the title tonight. 3 minutes, go. And I just fucking went because I was annoyed. I was over it, and I don't even remember what I said. I remember I quoted Pumping Iron. It was like the Arnold thing, like the lion climbing the hill, or the lion on top of the mountain isn't as hungry as the lion climbing the mountain, and blah, 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 blah. 3 minutes, hit at the mark, and then finally he just goes, huh. Well, I hope he hires you because I'm going to go tell him to. And that was it. So I got my job and ended up working there for about a year and a half. And then what ended up happening was really the same thing. Story of my career. I went through, and then I was the model student in the farm league. I'd moved down to Tampa. When it came time for cuts, it was like, hey, we're going to let you go. We don't have anything for you. You're doing great. Like, but again, you're not striking us as like a superstar. And at that moment, I'm like, I'm going to become the biggest, baddest motherfucker on the planet. Like, I'm going to get to like 300 pounds, and I'm going to be lean, and I'm going to fuck all of you. I'm going to be undeniable. So I remember I left, and then I left that meeting. I went home. I dug my testosterone that I hadn't taken in a year and a half because they were drug testing me out of the medicine cabinet, and I just put like 3 cc's in my quad. I'm like, let's fucking go. And then I just launched on a 2-year independent circuit where I was taking a lot of stuff, borderline irresponsible, but then I linked up with guys like Scott Stevenson who kind of set me straight and was like, no, you want to do it this way. You want to do this. And then I started looking better, and then I started feeling better. And then my health metrics started getting better. And then I started being like, this is really fucking cool. And then from there, I linked up with Ben Pekulski. And Ben had just opened the MI40 gym in Tampa. And I had known Ben from the Powerhouse gym that used to be downtown where...
So was this the pivot point?
It wasn't supposed to be, because at that point in time, I'm like, I'm going to link up with all these guys that are of the highest level of actual knowledge, because I really love this shit now. I'm really getting into it. I'm 29, almost 30. I've been working as a personal trainer now for 11 years.
Yeah, but that was just to kind of support the wrestling.
Right. But I've been doing it. I've been getting my reps.
Yeah.
I have a good idea how to train now. I know how to train different people. And now that I have exposure to these guys, I have more people coming to me asking me for my advice, because it's like, oh, that's the guy that trains with Ben and the MI40 guys, or that's the guy I saw him with Scott Stevenson. It's like, oh, well, I kind of like teaching people here. And then, wrestling was doing okay, and I had a shot to go back. I'd gotten up to about 280 pounds. That's when it really got to me. Like, these stairs are winding me. Like, I don't know if I can maintain this for a long time. I don't know if I like this. So let me downsize a little bit. Let me work on this project with Ben here that he has going on. And then it was...
All right, so before that, just from the training perspective, because people... I want to make sure my assumption's correct, but that people that following kind of know where we're coming from. It sounds like, just with the influences that you have, that the majority of your training's falling more along, the weight room training is falling more along the basic compounds, but then more HIIT style type training.
It was compound lifting and then bodybuilding. And...
I know, but the bodybuilding part, was it more inspired by Scott to where you're looking at this high effort, lower volume? Or was it more of the volume? Because I I'm guessing it would kind of have to be because you have all this other shit that you're doing.
Well, prior to that, so in WWE, I got to work a lot with Rob McIntyre, who was our strength and conditioning coach. He was John Cena's coach at the time. He's coached dozens of Olympic athletes as well. And Rob was the first person to really give me a good foundation in actual like athletic movements.
So you're looking at this from a periodization sport training standpoint.
This is where I began to.
Okay.
But my passion for training was based in bodybuilding at the time. So that was majorly influential. So Rob helped me kind of master my compound movements. He tried to get me into Olympic lifting. I was always terrible at it, but he exposed me to more athletic training and programming. And then he would
define that for me.
So just basically anything explosive. So he's the one that introduced me initially to conjugate. So
okay.
Anything that would make me a stronger, more explosive athlete, because in his opinion, that's what would make me more resilient in the ring. So
plyometrics, or just with each movement? Well, obviously with the big compound movements, but with the accessories too?
Yes.
Or, okay, so the accessories were explosive, which is actually good. You know, a lot of coaches don't do that. And what about the footwork plyometric? Was that just not part of it?
So we had some plyometric stuff put in there, but it was really focusing on just like max effort and dynamic effort for the most part. And
I wouldn't think it's necessary because it's kind of what you do.
It's one of those things where it's like, do I train this for my sport, or does doing my sport train this?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of up in the air about that. I think there's more bleed over than people give it credit for, but I do think your sport is the best thing to prepare you for your sport. And if you look at the first half of my wrestling career, or the majority of my wrestling career, really, that is a testament to that, because it was my wrestling that was making me good at wrestling, because the whole time I was really piecing together crappy bodybuilding training and just getting by, because I was just trying to get bigger. And then wrestling was making the wrestling part better.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I made it through without any major injuries. There's a genetic component to that too, because I really haven't suffered a major injury to this day. But I think it's a little bit of everything and being exposed to everything. So when I was getting more into the world of actual, like the science behind the training, because when I linked up with Ben, I linked up with Cassim from N1.
Yeah, so there's a divider here, right?
Yeah.
Big one. So what I'm trying to formulate is what your philosophy of training was prior, because it's going to pivot, it's going to change.
Right.
Was Ben still competing at that time?
Ben was just about wrapping it up. So when I started coming around, it was around the time of, I believe it was his last, it was either the Toronto Pro or the Arnold Classic. So, and those were two of his best looks.
Okay, this is interesting because he came out, I think, once or twice to be able to train in our old place with John Meadows, right? And it's at that time, the way the training had scaled was basically to make the training, if anybody ever came out, to not be able to handle it. Right? It's brutal.
Yeah.
Ben, out of all of them, Ken Jackson might have been the other, was a fucking workhorse.
Oh, yeah.
A workhorse. I mean, nothing. He kept going after we were fucking done.
Yep.
I mean, it was impressive, and he was strong as fuck, which normally that wasn't kind of the case nothing against the pro bodybuilders, but from the powerlifting world, it's different watching somebody do RDLs with, 275 or 315 or 495,
right?
After 2 hours of just pounding legs. And it seems like we're right about the same time frame.
Yes.
Because he only had I think he only competed a couple years after that one. But he was one that still, to me, was like, this dude was a fucking workhorse.
So, yes, and Ben was my first experience working with somebody that really checked every single box. Like, every single, because, like, Ben is tenacious as fuck. And he's got the genetics, and he tested this. He's got the genetics of a marathon runner, and just this grit and resilience and this ability to get asininely strong and put on muscle. And he just has this ungodly engine on him. And that's what took me from, I'm a fitness guy, I'm a personal trainer, I can teach people some stuff, to this obsession that I have with, like, I want to be good at everything. And I might not personally be the best at everything, but I want to know about everything. And I want to have answers for every single question, because that was Ben, because this was 15 years ago almost. And then Ben was already talking about mitochondria, and Ben was talking about biomechanics. And this was about the time when he was one of the only people doing that. And hey, this is probably the best way to isolate your lat. Now, it wasn't the bastardized, like overthought, like redundant biomechanics that people just beat into the ground today and being, oh, this needs to be this way or it's bullshit. But it was the first exposure I had, and that a lot of people had to, no, do this way. But also, take your balls out of your purse and fucking do it. Like, work fucking hard. And that's a part that I think is missing in those biomechanics crowds now. It's all like, oh, this angle to this, that, and the other thing. Ben would pay attention to that, but Ben would also be like, lift like a fucking man. Like,
well, it's interesting because it's missing there, right? But the intention is missing in the sport training side. Right. But then that's where you're coming from. That's what I was trying to lay that foundation from. Yes. Is you're coming from the sport training side where if you got to pump, whatever, good, but it's not the most important thing.
Right.
Like moving the shit fast to get strong is the most important thing. And a lot of times that movement execution is being compromised, bad word, because it's still doing what you want it to do. But this other world that you just stepped into kind of like flips that almost on its head.
Exactly. Well, the funny thing about it was I kind of eased my way into it because I had linked up with Scott Stevenson a little bit prior to linking up with Ben. And that was my first, as I mentioned, my first exposure to like a really intelligent approach to this stuff. And that's not that any of the coaches that I worked with didn't have an intelligent approach, but it was here's your bodybuilding stuff and then integrated in with your pro wrestling stuff.
Yeah.
Scott was, I had my exposure to periodization from Rob McIntyre. And then Scott just taught me programming for maximum development in every regard. So this rep range will do this. This one will do this. This is how we integrate this. This is the intensity that you need here, but then the frequency has to be here. Okay, cool. This is awesome. Then linking up with Ben from there. And again, that was those workouts that Ben was doing here. I'm sure that was the same workout that Ben did every morning at MI40 at 5:30. And that because he had one speed. So then I got invited to those workouts. And then those became my workouts. And it would be, if you want to go over what style it was, so to speak, there really wasn't a style. Like if it was leg day, we would do 3 or 4 exercises and we'd do a shitload of volume on all of them, a bunch of really heavy top sets. We'd work our way up till we really couldn't do anymore or add any more. There were times when, he would tell me get 20 reps to finish up leg extensions. And then if I couldn't get 20, he would take the seat belt and turn it upside down so I couldn't reach it to get myself out. He's like, I'll come back when you get 20. I'm like, I can't. He's like, I'll rest 5 minutes and get one at a time. I don't fucking care. We'd be doing leg press, and if I'd go to reach for the thing to re-rack it, he'd step on my hand. And just be like, one of my mentors used to do that to me all the time. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But it was insane. We trained for 2.5 hours sometimes. And we'd only do maybe 4 or 5 exercises, but we'd run those into the ground. And it wasn't always super fancy, but sometimes we do all these crazy intensifiers. And it was really just very accurate, very targeted training with the absolute highest degree of intensity. 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So it was just pure grit, but execution, like super zeroed in on. Make sure your hand's here, protract here, no drive down, no drive down, no drive down. But also put 4 more plates on there. You're lifting like a pussy. Dear God.
So what happens then with those top sets when that execution begins to fade towards the last reps? Is the set, are you calling the set over, or is it keep fucking going?
So at times then it was different because it would be me and Ben and a group of other guys usually, and we'd just be kind of pushing ourselves. So sometimes it's just, hey, we're just going to have a meathead workout and we're going to push through this no matter what. We're going to make sure that we're checking all the boxes and making an intelligent workout. But also, like, I don't care if you're up on your toes for this last rep of your hack squats. Like, you're going to fucking finish no matter what. And I do think to a degree that's important as well. As my philosophies have evolved and I've continued to learn and study under other people and continue to dive into deeper education and then more importantly, work with more people, both in person and online, and experience a multitude of different people, I've adopted more of a philosophy of, I hate to say this, but it depends. But as long as everything's adding up, so volume, intensity, and frequency always have to be correlated. So if one moves, the others have to move. And finding that exact equation is going to be different depending on the individual, depending on the genetics, depending on the current settings. What's their day-to-day life like? What's their stress level like? What's their goal? What's the actual outcome? So those things have to be correlated. But then in the actual setting of the workout, when do we call a set? When's it too much? I always look for failure, or I look for technical failure also. So technical failure, in my opinion, and by my definition, is when the rep no longer resembles the rep to a reasonable degree. I don't care if something moves a little bit to where it shouldn't have to move, and I think caring about that is asinine because we're not machines. But situationally, once I'm losing the ability to co-contract what I need to keep myself locked down, if all the other muscles in my body that need to keep my positioning in such a way to execute something, just they don't have the ability to do that anymore, and I start slumping over or moving in the seat or moving my initial setup, that to me is failure based on the fact that I might not have localized failure in the muscle that I'm training, but I no longer have the ability to execute the movement properly. Maybe that muscle itself isn't failing, but if everything else is failing, I can no longer perform properly, then rest assured that that muscle is likely 1 or 2 reps away from failing anyways, which I also think is close enough. Mm-hmm. Now, some people will say you got to go, keep 1 or 2 in the tank at all times. Some people say fail every single time. My whole thing with it is I think you should try to fail every single time because most people can't. And I don't mean every single set, but I mean every single top set. Most people can't, because in a lot of cases, even for us, even for guys that can generate a ton of intensity, so we know what failure feels like, there are situations where it happens to me all the time. I'll be doing my heaviest set of something and I'm like, oh shit, I don't have it. Yep, that's it. That's the end of it. And then I'll stop and be like, fuck you, you fucking bitch. And then I'll get like 3 more. That's closer to real failure. And if you're doing that all the time, but you're getting fatigued, your resting heart rate's going up, your sleep is starting to suffer, you're just noticing these symptoms that are kind of intruding on your day-to-day life, then you're probably driving too much fatigue. Then you probably don't have enough energy to recover from your workouts. And inevitably, if you keep doing it, you're going to start backtracking, law of accommodation. But if that starts happening, just don't go to failure that often.
Yeah. Well, to play into your example is I've always kind of done, well, not always, but once I learned how to kind of regulate my training, and I would be in a situation like you described, like you're going through the set and it's a set of 8 or whatever, and you get the 8, and in your brain, you don't really try like you should. The first thing that goes through my head is, do I really want to do another fucking set? Right? Because if I stop now, I'm probably going to have to add another set. Yep. Or do I just want to rest, pause this fucking thing and do the other 3 or 4 reps that I should do, or strip it or whatever I need to do just to be able to get the effort that I'm looking for. And if I can get the effort out of 2 work sets and I don't need to do 4, right? If the effort's going to be shit, then I probably need to do 4. Do I really want to do, and time dependent, but these are all skills. This is kind of where I was going, is they're all skills that you're developing at that time. The ability to kind of, I call it auto-regulate, auto-regulate your training, because you might, be, is Eric Bugenhagen, you might be horse cocking, right?
Yep.
For, 1 or 2 sessions, but then that next leg session that you come in, this shit just don't feel like it should feel. Right. So now you're just going to control the tempo. You're still going to train just as hard. The loads may not be the same, but you might change foot position. You might do something that's a different type of intensifier to lower the load and to lower how much mental push you have to put into it. And then you're kind of indirectly periodizing, over that long term, where that's where I think everybody needs to strive to be.
Oh, 100%.
With training, and time will do it, right? Training with other people that are doing it will do that. You coach people, right? In person, right? How do you, because you got to anchor it. And there's more things to anchor here than just failure. This is the problem I have with the RPE and the RIR. Like what mental state am I allowed to be in here? Right. There's a big difference here. Like I can have 3 different states and one of them's probably not good for my training. I know it. Right. But it's there. Right. So but if you're working with somebody, you have to find a way to anchor, whatever that top intensity is at these different levels. Maybe not with like Gen Pop. They probably don't need to know this crazy ass, super high intense.
Well, you said something super profound there, and I want to back up and I want to repeat it, because if it's something that you just kind of said, I want to really hyper focus on it, because I feel like you should say it all the time because it's so subtly brilliant. I don't want to let it just pass by.
Yeah.
And it was that once you've mastered autoregulation, and you're at a point right now where it's like this like Jedi mastery of your training. Like you don't really have to think about what you're going to do. You know what your general goal is, and you're going to go out and you're going to go towards that goal. You said that you're going to put in the amount of effort that you need based on what you need to produce. So something along those lines. So it's knowing that I need XYZ amount of effort in this relative pattern. So many people are getting so caught up in this hyper specificity as though your brain actually knows, like your lizard brain, your subconscious back there, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to go, hold on, motherfucker. You did 6 sets of 12 reps with 6 plates per side on hack squats last week. And you only did 6 sets of 11 reps with 6 plates per side, but then you only had a quarter for the last set this week. We're not going to progress at all. This wasn't exactly like further from the exact plan that you had. You didn't progress in this. That's a shit workout. It doesn't count. You're done. Or like you did the iliac lat pull down last week, and now this one is a slightly different variation. Nope, you're not progressing, because people treat it like that now. Your brain, the part of your brain that's sending these signals to cause these adaptions, they're sensing this generalized effort. It's a mix of load and frequency and intensity and everything like that. So when you're saying stuff like, well, if I'm going to do this last set and I don't really want to have to do another set, but I know I haven't like given my chest what I need to give it as far as stimulus for this workout. I'm going to rest pause, or I'm going to do a drop set, or I'm going to do whatnot. And then the internet will lash on to, no, it's minimum fatigue and maximum mechanical tension, because this study said that XYZ number of participants gained this many more centimeters of lean muscle over this time, so thereby everything else. Those studies give us a good idea of things that will work in general for most people in generalized settings, but it doesn't discredit everything else, and it doesn't discredit instinct, and it certainly doesn't discredit general effort and moderated fatigue, meaning that you got to push to a certain degree with a certain frequency, volume, and intensity. It's got to match up with your food somehow. And then you got to recover. So that's not this many sets of this to failure, or 1 RIR, or 72% 0.5 RPE to the nth power, or whatever it might be. It's I got to beat myself up this much.
I built Elite FTS in 1998, 27 years ago, with the aim to help educate as many people as I could in strength and conditioning. And the way to do that was to keep all the content complementary. The way that we've been able to do that since day one is by providing the best products possible to help your training program. If you can put the item in a gym bag or load plates on it, we have it, and it will work. Everything from SS yoke bars to American press bars, bands. We also have a strength equipment specialist staff that helps outfit home gyms, sport training centers, colleges that have over 3 decades of experience and also have spent a lot of time working as coaches, so they understand the flow of the weight room and how things actually get done. If you're serious about your training and you want to up your game and support the podcast and all the content that we provide, head over to elitefts.com and use the code TABLETALK at checkout to receive 10% off your orders.
Because this is my goal and this is what I can recover from. And auto-regulation, it's a skill, but once you get there, you can progress without really keeping track of anything, because you can really feel it out.
You just feel it out. No, it's when there were several years I was training with John, and I did like 3 shows when I was in fucking high school and college. So set all that aside. Most of my training was always from the strength world, right? So it's always a cost benefit, of everything, right? So after those main movements that really matter, all the other shit was just kind of like stuff that you had to do or you wanted to do for vanity reasons. But I always had to play this game. Like, is this going to add or take away from whatever that next training session is going to be, even with the top main movements, the squat, bench, and deadlift. If I push this extra rep, how's it going to impact, my deadlift that's going to be on Thursday or the squat that's going to be next Monday? Is it worth this? And if I do it, how am I going to find a way to better recover to be able to pay the price for what I just did because I wanted to, have a better ego, and which you do, right? But you got to, there's always these calculations, right? So when I remember with lats at some point, John, it was a weak point and he was bringing up the volume slowly over a period of time, and it was fucking ridiculous. It like 40 work sets or whatever it was. And it's getting to a point where, after the first 3 or 4 movements, I'm like, what exactly is this 5th movement going to do that we hadn't already done? Right. And I still don't know the answer to that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think anybody does. Right. But if you've accommodated to that certain workload, then you probably only have 2 choices, right? You either need to push the workload or you need to deload so much that your work capacity drops. So when you reintroduce at a higher work capacity, you can start building back up again, to be able to kind of play through that whole scenario, which with experience, we get it, right? But when you're working with these clients, right, and you have where you are at, you have different levels of people that you're working with, I assume.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you have the Gen Pop all the way to the highest level, right? When you're dealing with that highest level, there's all these variables, and the variables of the feedback they're going to give you. Some value, probably at that level, most valuable, and a lot is not, right? What I wonder is if we're just talking the bodybuilders, which is the majority of the people that were coming in there, right? Right. So if we're just over 50%.
People with bodybuilding goals.
Yes, bodybuilding goals. And it's just that. Was there a common frequency? Because we can go and look on YouTube and we can find optimal X, Y, and Z for how often a body part should be trained. Was there what you found an optimal frequency? And I hate to say this, but I'm going to, because people get it, in an optimal split that everybody seemed, because it never stays the same, right? It's always going to deviate. Was there a base that you found?
So again, it's so different amongst so many people, and there's variables leading from the person's individual genetics to the current settings of the person's life, stress levels, all this stuff. And it also, a lot of it has to do on the actual stimulus, the type of workout that you're doing as well too. Certain workouts, if you're doing something that's high intensity, moderate rest, but you're not really tapping into glycogen at all, it's not glycolytic at all. If you're primarily using your ATP phosphocreatine system, for example, that type of workout can be very restorative because you're not doing a whole lot of damage. You're not really frying your CNS. You could do more of that in a week than you could something that's really high volume, really highly glycolytic.
But those, do those even matter? Like, so if we're to look at those type of workouts that you're talking about, which are just going to be lighter, right? So they're lighter, blood flow and shit like that, where I see that you have 2 choices, just fucking rest or do that. Right. And in the strength world, sometimes the answer is just fucking rest.
Right.
It's a better answer because even though this isn't producing, that much more damage, we can't definitively say it's not producing any.
Right, exactly.
We can't say this is all recovery based. You get where I'm now. If they're addicted to training, it's going to play this different type of role. Do you get what I'm asking?
Oh, 100%. So if we were to look at it just from a straightforward, like, I'm going to go train this muscle, I want it to grow, or I want to maintain the size of it while I'm dieting down. So we'll go with more purely aesthetic goals. I don't want to say bodybuilding because then people think competitive bodybuilding. I work with tons of people that are just business owners, CEOs.
They train like bodybuilders
because they want that aesthetic look, but then they also want some strength. They want a little bit of everything, but they're hyper focused on the look. So when I refer to bodybuilding training, for all intents and purposes, that's kind of what I mean, not competitive bodybuilding, because there's a lot of nuance in competitive.
Oh, there's a big difference.
So I found if we were to generalize it, I don't like more than 20 working sets for any body part in the course of a week. And I like to break that up as much as possible based on the schedule or the individual resilience or availability of the person, what they can withstand, what they can generate high amounts of tension. Because no matter what, if you're going to do 20 hard sets for your chest in one day, sets 10 plus are nowhere, they're not going to be anywhere near as effective as the first 10. But if I do that same load of 20 working sets and I do 10 of those hard sets on Monday and then 10 of those hard sets on Thursday or Friday, then the second 10 now have this intensity that matches the intensity of the first 10. So I'm getting more bang for my buck there. But I do want to talk a little bit more about like the energy systems and the different styles of training, because that does matter, but on a different level.
Yeah.
So we have two different approaches to training stimulus, and then we have a third that's kind of in a world of its own, even though there's kind of bleed over. They're like rings that all kind of connect together. So we have like neurological based training or strength based training, just training for maximum output. Then that bleeds into hypertrophy training, because in between you have things like I think it's like functional hypertrophy was the Poliquin term, where you're doing hypertrophy training, but you're like 4 to 6 reps. It's really high intensity. The volume's a little bit lower. Obviously, you have strength training, which is a whole other planet in and of itself, but it's focused primarily on output. And there's a big neurological component to that. And then on the other side, you have metabolic training. And metabolic training can be your stuff like, I'm going to go do battle ropes and sled sprints and, CrossFit-y things. And I don't really care for CrossFit, but I like all the stuff they do within the CrossFit. I would just put it in a slightly different setting. But that type of stuff, sandbag runs and throws and everything like that, if you do a tremendously high amount of work, let's say you have a 1 hour training block whenever you go train. And then one of those training blocks, you're not training for 2 hours. You're not training for 3 hours. You're training for the same hour, but you're lowering your recovery time in between sets and you're fitting more work into that single hour. You're creating more output. Obviously, the intensity is not going to be high. So it's not going to be anything like a strength-based session. It might be similar to a hypertrophy-based session, but again, that intensity is not going to be there. That's why people will generally lean into things like battle ropes, med ball slams, things that are very important, even for bodybuilders, even the competitive ones, in my opinion, because you're losing a lot of like rotational capability and a lot of ability to move. And then that's where injuries happen. Like if you look at a case like, I don't want to say this is definitively what happened because I'm not him and I wasn't there. But if you look at somebody like Branch Warren, everybody kind of like crapped on how he trained in the gym, which I wouldn't do in a million years because it produced phenomenal results. That worked great for him. Every time he had a major injury, it was outside the gym because those major injuries were essentially movement patterns that he wasn't training and becoming more resilient towards. So having in those rotational movements, med ball slams, sandbag stuff, I think even for a competitive bodybuilder in the off season, that's important to train. But my point is that style of training, cramming a shitload of effort into a small block of time, is going to demand energy at a different pace. Now, you can do that with your bodybuilding style training also. That would be if you're doing like Milos Sarcev style stuff, like supersets, giant sets. And the reason that guys like Milos, that it's no secret, he's very open about, is his thing. He's an insulin guy. The reason that those style of workouts work really good with insulin is because insulin is hyper-loading glycogen into the system. And those styles of workouts both burn through shitloads of glycogen and they train your body's ability to store glycogen, to store substrate in general. So when you're doing a highly glycolytic session, if I'm just jumping machine to movement, maybe doing some med ball slams in between, or maybe it's all localized, maybe it's a bunch of chest movements all strung together and I'm just trying to get as much of a pump as humanly possible, that changes how energy is created on a cellular level.
Now, when you're looking at this, is the primary focus going to be the heart rate or the actual movement patterns that you're going through?
So it's going to be primarily the heart rate and the rest time, because that's going to create the metabolic stimulus. The movement patterns are going to be selected because that will make that workout complementary to your goals. So if your overall goal is nothing but just, I want to get lean as all hell, and I want cardiac health as a side effect to that, maybe your battle rope gauntlets, your prowler sprints, your stuff like that on those days is going to be ideal.
Well, I'm thinking the injuries that can happen outside of the gym, if those, I don't want to say specific movement patterns are being used, but movement patterns that are greater than the movement patterns that you're doing for all your other training.
Right. So in those cases, I would be doing like rotational work, transverse plane work. That's the great time to just take a 200-pound sandbag and see how many times you can squat down, pick it up, throw it over your shoulder in a 2-minute block, then rest for a minute, then do it for 2 minutes again. Put yourself in positions that are going to be a little bit outside the box of those positions you're training. Because we know the positions that we're training, the movement patterns that we're training during our main or primary training blocks, we need to perfect our squat to either get a really heavy squat, or if a squat's developing our glutes to the degree that we want it to, and that's our primary movement pattern to grow bigger glutes, if that's the goal, we still want to perfect our squat. But then on that metabolic day where the loads are going to be a little bit lighter, maybe that's our day to have to squat a sandbag because I got to get down. I have to purposefully butt wink and like curve my spine over and then.
Well, it's going to be lower load. I mean, it should be
exactly
lower load, and it should be scaled down to who that person is.
So now I'm going to be more resilient if I'm doing just regular barbell back squats and something slips a bit or something's off or something gets tight on one side. So that's going to build that resiliency because I like anything that I can multi-purpose. If I can build more resiliency on a day where I'm also driving metabolic conditioning, the cool thing about driving that metabolic conditioning is what's essentially happening is if I'm driving constant need for energy, then my body's going to start pulling glucose like a motherfucker. So cells have to pull substrate. So substrate is primarily going to come from the form of glucose or fats. Fats give us more ATP per unit. So 1 unit of body fat will give us a shitload of ATP. 1 unit of glucose will only give us a little bit of ATP. But the difference is fat, without getting into the Krebs cycle and everything like that, for fat to turn into a bunch of ATP, it's like, you ever play that game Mousetrap when you were a kid where there's like all this fucking shit? Finally ATP. For glucose to become ATP, it's right there. So you only get a little bit, but you get it way faster. So if I'm training and I'm doing circuit training, or if I'm doing supersets of incline press with bent over rows or whatnot, I need that energy. I need it fast. My body knows that fat's going to take way too long to get here, even though that's kind of optimal energy for low heart rate environments for the rest of the day. And the creatine system is only working for the first couple seconds of a movement and it has to recharge before it really can. I need that glucose and I need it now. So it's pulling that really quickly. So what ends up happening is you're rapidly depleting your muscular glycogen. Then you're driving this demand after your training because your body's going, holy fuck, I don't know what just happened, but we just used a shitload of glycogen. Give this motherfucker more glycogen for next time. So we're basically increasing the storage unit, so to speak. So now we can hold more intramuscular glycogen. We're training that ability. So now our muscles are holding more substrate. They can work harder in that condition. That will change the cosmetic appearance significantly faster because what will also happen is when you go into that hyperglycogen storage mode after that workout, what that workout elicits, where do you think your body's going to get energy? Because if you're now storing maximum glycogen and your body wants to store more and more because it sensed that massive stimulus that it might need more glycogen in the future, you're going to basically become more metabolically flexible and you're going to burn more fat more sufficiently. Fat will get pulled and turned into acetyl-CoA and put in this cell, and that will get spit out for energy. And now when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, when I'm working at my laptop, when I'm talking on a podcast, I'm burning more body fat because my body is now better trained to save glucose, to save glycogen more specifically, for actually training in that workout. Now, the toss-up to that is people attack those style of workouts because they're like, I'm going to get really, really lean. And then they do it, they're just run into the ground. The problem is people will do something to get really, really lean, and then they'll go, oh, I need to get lean. I'm going to cut my carbs. If you're doing something that cellularly drives a massive need for glucose, but you don't have enough glucose, like your intramuscular glycogen is super low as it is, once that bottoms out, if that's already on E when you start that workout, then you go into this massive workout. First thing that's going to happen is your body's going to sense low energy. That's going to spike cortisol, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but cortisol basically stimulates glucagon. That will pull any liver glycogen that you have stored for your emergency backup to put glucose into your blood so you can get that fast energy for that circuit training. But once that bottoms out, your body still needs glucose. It's not like it goes, okay, we'll wait for the fat now, because if you're not making ATP, you're just going to drop dead. You're going to pass out. So the body's going to go, okay, shit, I need glucose because this workout is fast and it's intense and I don't have a chance to just sit down and recuperate here and I don't have enough glycogen. I need to make glucose right now. So when that second cortisol spike hits and then there's nothing left in the liver, that's where our body's going to start actually making glucose. It'll make glucose before it actually gets the fat to turn into energy. So that's gluconeogenesis, which we all kind of hear as something that's like horrible and we need to avoid it. When it's happening in this setting, yeah, it's not what we want, but it's a survival mechanism. So in gluconeogenesis, we're actually making glucose, and we're making glucose primarily from amino acids. That's the easiest place to make it from. So we have stored amino acids, but that's our lean muscle tissue. So at that point in time, we're pulling and cleaving amino acids.
Well, you're making the assumption that there's no carbohydrates or sugar in the system.
That's if you've already, yeah.
Yes,
If you're trying to get lean and you're doing it from a low carb approach, and then you're doing this intensive metabolic training, then you're basically trying to pull from a gas tank that's not there. So it's kind of like the car starts like breaking off pieces of itself.
I mean, it's going to pull the nitrogen from the protein before it's going to hit the fat.
Well, that's where bodybuilders make huge mistakes. And now I'm talking more about either competitive bodybuilders or people at the end of like a very extreme cut, because it becomes like, all right, I'm like on 0 carbs for like 3 months. And now it's like, I really got to push. I'm going to do 4 hours of intense cardio every day, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. I got to do these super sets. I got to do these giant sets. And what's happening is that process is so taxing. The cell's now spitting out so much ROS, reactive oxygen species. It's like sparks coming off the engine when you're kind of like redlining the motor too much. Those sparks end up damaging stuff that they're bouncing into because there's free radicals there. Free radicals are unpaired electrons. So these electrons are bouncing through your system. Electrons want to be paired up. So these free radicals, that's what a free radical is. It's an unpaired electron. It'll just find random shit to stick to. And when it's sticking to parts of your biology where it shouldn't be, that's going to create a state that's called, we've all heard of it, oxidative stress. Oxidative stress goes up, redox balance is off. Now your body is just shitty at making energy. When you're shitty at making energy, that's not just energy to like, oh, I'm alert, I'm on a podcast, I had some coffee. It's energy to like live, but it's also energy to recover. It's energy to rebuild from injuries. It's energy to think. Like that whole system is now bogged down because it's almost like you're trying to drive 100 miles with your gas tank on E. We all know not to do that because that's bad for the engine. But imagine if you could do that and keep going. Now the car's essentially eating itself. That in and of itself drives inflammation through the roof. Inflammation signaling chronically through the roof is like your body thinks there's a billion fires going on at all times. Now all the resources are trying to address all these fires. So you have these little like firefighting systems in your body that are supposed to just go out and put out fires like if you bang your elbow or if you strain a bicep. Now the whole fire force is just driving around 24/7 spraying hoses at fucking nothing because it thinks there's fires everywhere. And then that gets into the endothelial lining in your arteries. There's no fire, but then your body's sending LDL cholesterol to try and like patch up a hole that's not there because it's just inflammation. That leads to atherosclerosis, and then it's a whole hell of a mess.
Actually, I have a question. So when you were talking about all the like fats and glucose and stuff, kind of how you compared the two, you said like fats, they take longer to like go through your body. And if you do like an intense workout, you're basically pulling from empty. But like with the glucose, it kind of sounded to me like, is that kind of the purpose of like what intra-workout does? Is because I know people were saying like, well, I mean, I've just heard it saying you shouldn't drink carbs, but then I've started doing it and my sessions are a lot better. And so is that kind of like what the purpose would be for that, to kind of give you that glucose? I just kind of wanted to like, I understand it, but I also was just kind of wondering like, is that where intra-workout would come in basically to give your body what it needs? Because like what I've been doing is more like intense stuff the past like 7 weeks or so, and it started basically at the end of my cut, which I'm sure people are tired of hearing about that. But the last 3 weeks I was so run down, and I was not using intra-workout because I wanted to save my calories for food.
Right.
And I had to take a week off just because I couldn't put a barbell on my back just because I was so burnt out. And then I started taking intra-workout and the workouts became just so much better. So that's kind of, is that kind of like an example of what you were talking about with glucose?
Right. You're paying that glucose toll while it's being accumulated. So it's like while you're ringing up the bill, now you have a credit card. So you can just kind of like put some of that bill on the credit card as you're going, so you're not driving yourself into more debt. So that glucose, again, it's readily available. And if you're doing an intra-workout, chances are you're using like carbolin, cyclic dextrin, even dextrose, something that's pretty rapidly digesting. So if you're putting that in while you're creating a demand for glucose, I mean, every carbohydrate eventually makes its way to glucose for the most part. So if we have a fast digesting intra-workout, as soon as that hits your stomach, starts going through your GI, you have glucose levels in your blood start going up. Now you have that fuel readily available. Now you can actually kind of push through, and it's not just like you're driving on empty and just you hear the motors going as you're going. You actually have fuel for that system. And you mentioned at the tail end of a cut, that makes even more sense because an intra-workout is something that I think is both underrated and overrated depending on the settings. So if I'm in a maintenance level of calories, or if I'm trying to put on size and I'm at a surplus, if I have adequate carbohydrate intake and I'm not training like in the CrossFit games or something insanely glycolytic, or I'm not doing these asinine 3-hour workouts and whatnot, if I have adequate carbohydrate, the intra-workout, there's some benefit to paying off that glucose debt a little bit, and it's not going to do any harm. But if your carbohydrate intake is super low and you're basically running on a quarter take in glycogen at all times, that intra-workout is going to ensure that you're avoiding that cortisol spike that could potentially start eliciting gluconeogenesis and then pulling from lean tissue, which you don't want, in order to try to make that glucose to get you through the workout. Because your brain doesn't know you're working out. The brain's not like, we're in a facility with these cool fucking machines that let us do things to become like just jacked because being jacked is fucking awesome. Your brain is like, there's something's fucking trying to kill us right now. So it's in survival mode. So you're just paying off that glucose debt. So I love intra-workout in a dieting setting. In fact, I love the approach, and there's a billion approaches to all this. I love the approach that as you diet somebody down, you just take their carbohydrate window and you just slowly close it into the workout until the last place it is pre, intra, or post-workout.
I just want to take a moment to let you know about our crew. What our crew is, it allows the show to stay independent, and it's the reason why the podcast is still here now. The podcast is free to listen to, but it's not free to produce. It keeps going because of the sales through elitefts, our show sponsors, but more importantly, our crew members. The reason I love this is for many reasons, is it keeps the show independent. So I can pick who I want to speak to. I can pick what topics I want to speak to, and I don't have to be accountable to anybody. I just go off what the crew members want and what the audience wants, and I don't have to deal with all the other bullcrap that's associated with the podcast world. In return, what you get with the crew is ad-free episodes that are released a day ahead of time. You get access to our Discord community, which has AMAs, like 60 ebooks. We try to put a new ebook out every single month. Access to our coaching community with form checks, training Q&As. It also gives you invitations to our training retreats that are out here in the gym once or twice a year. 76% of all the people that joined in 2022 are still members now. Right now, you can either go month to month or get 2 months free with an annual plan. Just look for the link in the description, look at the QR code, or search elitefts.com crew and join today. It means a lot.
All right. Yeah, that makes total sense. So kind of full circle moment on that one. So,
a lot of this stuff is actually, if you really break it down, it's pretty fucking simple. So it's like, even like I know I just rambled about the metabolic stuff, but need energy really fast. Really fast energy is glucose. Need more glucose, fuel that energy. You're still burning through it. Glycogen sparing, you might burn some fat afterwards. People just misunderstand, or they overcomplicate, or like we were speaking about before, they see 40 seconds on a reel that says, this is this. And then they go, hey, this is this. And then like 3 years later, somebody says something to the contrary, and they go, no, fuck you. I read all about this. This is this. And it's like, you watched a 40-second clip like half a decade ago, but the internet's going to internet. So
I'm going to circle back to the intro here in a second, but what I wanted to point was with the metabolic training that you were talking about for people who train like bodybuilders. In the world where the people who train like powerlifters, we would see that as general physical preparedness, just GPP. And there's the same situations occur there where it can help, with recovery, just from the circulational aspects. You're moving more blood,
right,
which is helping to recover from that main training session. But same situations can happen if they go too hard. Now it's screwing up their next training sessions that really matter because they went too hard. The other thing in the strength world is it's to increase your base level of work capacity, right? Your basic fitness level. At a certain point, you don't need a higher fitness level to be able to do that thing.
Right.
Right. So it's at a certain point, it can be pulled out. This would be why people will pull things out before they peak before a meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple reasons why. The other reason to be able to pull it out is so you can suck at it again. So when you bring it back in, you don't have to start at an escalated level compared to where you were before.
Right.
You can have the adaptations from that lower level back to whatever that base level is. And the bodybuilding, those people that train like bodybuilders in that world, it doesn't come out, right? Which seems to me like it can create a real fucked up situation, right? Because you're going to adapt to that, then it's not going to do what it necessarily needs to be doing unless there's some kind of phasic something's got to be going on to be able to avoid that, right? The same problems are still going to exist.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go too hard. You don't want to go too light, but you want to be able to hit that perfect range, which is a big range, right? It's the too hard and too light's a very small percentage, right? But it's a big range, but you'll adapt to that range, right? And with the extreme examples with the cuts and stuff like that, that's really like in my brain, it's like, that's when it should come out, but that's also part of where they're getting their calorie deficit from. Right. So you pull that out, what is it? 125 calories or whatever. It's going to have to come out. How do they manage that in that world?
So one thing that you did mention that I want to really like hyper focus on right now is that people will tend to beat their training system into the ground, and having resilience and being able to expand into different areas. That is intelligent programming really at its core. And that's what avoids that style of burnout there. So there are two people now speaking a lot on the importance of maintaining metabolic flexibility and speaking about homeostasis and how the body just wants to not change. And so I name drop a lot because a lot of people don't do it. And I think it's super weird because it's still this weird thing in this culture where I can talk about like greats of the past and people go like, he's very studious. But if I talk about somebody that's really smart doing something right now, it's like, the fuck? Like, well, why is he talking about him? It's almost just like, you can only talk about people from the past. Like if I reference anything that you've done, or if I go back further and start talking about like Bill Kazmaier, or I drop weird random like Easter eggs and talk about like Joseph Wilkos and just random people that have done really cool things. And I'm like, he used to talk about this. People are like, oh. But if I talk about somebody that posted something last week on Instagram that's really smart, it's kind of like dismissive. Like, I don't know if that comes from everybody has to be the expert of all experts right now. And if I say anybody else that is in my field is smart, then I'm costing myself business, because that's bullshit. But that's why I name drop a lot. So I'll just talk about people currently doing stuff. So two people putting out a lot of really cool information about homeostasis and the need for metabolic flexibility are Joel Green and Joe Binley. And they're doing this independently. I don't know if they even know each other, but they're putting out a lot of information on how it's so important to fight homeostasis, and how what works for you for a given amount of time is not going to continuously work for you, because the adaptive process within the body is what's driving the changes that we want to see. But your body won't continuously adapt to the same stimulus. And eventually we get into the world of loose world of the law of accommodation, where it's like we're trying to push a response. There's no more response. We're floating here. And then all of a sudden now we're backtracking because we're not eliciting anything that can change a response. So that's why I feel like it's so important to program things intelligently, so people aren't just constantly beating the same thing in the ground. Like you're saying about putting things in, taking them out. In the world of strength sports, something like metabolic conditioning could be spectacular for GPP, but after your general preparation phase is done and you need to get into the brass tacks of getting ready for this meet, that's only going to take away from your recoverability. Sure. You only have so much recoverability. I look at it like a life meter in a Mortal Kombat game. If you're like, it's go time and you need to focus on output, you don't want to take chunks off that life meter by doing metabolic conditioning at the wrong time.
Yes.
But you can apply that to literally everything. So if we have somebody that's been doing like bodybuilding training stimulus for a super long time and nothing else, and there's people that I respect massively that do think you should do the same thing all the time, 24/7, that just maybe change the movements. But it just, with everything that I've learned from so many people about how the body reacts to different things, I think there's always going to be a case for shifting things in, even if you're just putting in a phase where you're doing a couple different things on a few days per week, but you still do your bread and butter stuff a few days per week. I think that's incredibly important too. I'll take a bodybuilder that's been doing bodybuilding training, even at the highest level. And one of my favorite things to do is to throw a heart rate monitor on them and watch what their heart rate does during their bodybuilding training. And you'll have some of these guys that'll do like 1,000-pound leg press and their heart rate barely goes above 160 because they're so proficient at that heavy leg press. They've been doing that heavy ass set of 8, basically off and on, more on than off for the last 10 years. The body's used to it. I can give, and I've done this several times, give that same guy or girl a 20-pound med ball and say, slam this 20 times. Heart rate's like 210. It's like, you need to stop or you're going to die. When's the last time you did that? I've never done that. Oh, so don't you think that if you could do that and then your heart rate goes up to like 140, doesn't that technically make you more cardiovascularly proficient? And doesn't making yourself more cardiovascularly proficient, does that really have nothing to do with your other training? Your strength training won't be at least a little bit better. Your hypertrophy training won't be just a little bit better. And it's not going to be the primary driver to getting a massive squat. But if your heart's that much stronger, then your training is going to be that much better and you're going to increase output that much more. So that's the need to rotate it in. Now, if you're just the business executive that wants to be jacked, but also I want to be really strong in case I get in a fight. And also like, I want to be able to jump really high for no good reason. I had somebody tell me that once. It's like, all right, we'll mix these things up a lot and we'll periodize in such a way that you either get to do a little bit of everything because maybe you don't have an immediate all-encompassing goal, so we can do a little bit of everything knowing that it'll take longer to get to individual goals, or we just phase things in and out a little bit more. But even for somebody that has a very specific goal, somebody dedicating their life to their physique or their strength or just general longevity, there's always a reason to kind of program these things in. And the perfect program is tough. Like you said at the beginning of this conversation, the ability to auto-regulate and to master that is the greatest tool that any lifter, biohacker, strength enthusiast, fucking experimenter, whatever we want to call ourselves, that's the greatest tool that anybody can ever achieve, and it's fucking hard. But if you're not there yet and you need a good program, there's a good program and there's the best program for the individual. You can write somebody a good program. I bought every program that John Meadows ever made, and I still reference them to this day. They're fucking fun. They're awesome. They're intelligently constructed. I love them. The best program for the individual, the best program for you, I can tell you what it will generally look like based on you and your goals, but the actual best program, it's living and breathing. Week 3 might change based on week 2. Month 6 might change based on month 3. These things, it's a living and breathing thing, and we have to see in real time what happened from this so we know what to do with this, or how long to stretch this, or, oh shit, we got to put some of this in because you fucking suck at this. So again, it's hard to predict. You can't put it out there immediately. You can give somebody a general, if I got to drive back to Sarasota today, if the airport's shut down, the government goes on strike again, or whatever the fuck's going on, I don't pay attention to anything but meathead shit. But if the airport closes and I got to drive back to Sarasota, I have no idea where I'm going, but you've toured the entire country by car, you can just tell me, go in that direction. Go, just more or less go south. Because we don't know what I'm going to encounter along the way. So I might need to make those. I know that I should go south. I have a general idea of what my plan should look like. And I might know that I have to take this highway and that highway. But also I need to know what happens. I need to know what to do if a giant tree falls in the main highway and how to navigate the side streets. Or if the other highway is just not there anymore. Sorry, Drew, I haven't driven to Florida in 20 years. They changed the whole road system. Fuck. Well, I know I have to go this way. Let me go this way. So again, the perfect program is going to live and breathe, and you can't just be redundant. It's like squeezing blood out of a stone. Your training goals don't have to change, but the way you get there should at least pivot before pivoting back to the main way to get there.
Let me tell you a story about John's original programs that will reiterate kind of everything that we spoke to up to this point. When he trained at Westside for a little bit, so I knew who he was. And at some point in my career, I don't know what the reason why, I couldn't find a purpose for my training, which happens when you get older. And he reached out to me because he wanted to buy some chains or something like that. And so we're talking, and he wanted to come out to train legs. So we trained legs, and it was brutal, and I fucking loved it. It's like, okay, this training hard shit. Yep. Yeah, this might work, this. So I leaned into that. And after several times of him coming out, he was working with a handful of clients at the time. And I asked him, because he said he was doing their programming. And I said, well, just send me that, and I'll just do whatever that is. That way I don't have to think about it. You know, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do during the week. And because basically at that point, just winging shit. Right. And what I realized was every time he would come in, and he'd come out a couple times a week, he'd have a Post-it note. And on the Post-it note, he would write, you know, the movements, kind of like the sets and the reps, what was going to be done. Not one time did we ever do what was actually on that Post-it note. Most of it. Right. But the first thing always, maybe the first two always. Then after that, there are changes and shit like that made, and he'd write on the Post-it note. And then when it got to the point, this might be 6 months in, where I said, look, just start sending me the sessions that you're sending to these other guys, the program. And it was not the individual program, but the basic programming that members or whatever were getting. And so he would send this to me, and I'd look at it and be like, that's what we did last week. Right. Then the next week would come. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Like we literally just did this. Like, I'm not going to repeat the same damn thing. Right. And so essentially what he was doing was he'd write what he wanted to do down, you know, on the Post-it note, instinctively change that. And then he would go write that in a Word doc. And then after 8 weeks or so went by, that became the program that he would send out to people. Right. So it was being built through him auto-regulating that training that was kind of going on through that time.
You get to see how something breathes and flows in real time.
Yes.
And then that's how you put it together.
And those are the original ones. Now, later on, he started to map it all out because he's making more programs than he can actually do. And so it changed, because that's actually way harder, you know, to build a program out like that. Way harder. Whereas I found it interesting because it was just the same shit that we were doing, but he would have that idea and then realize, oh, this is going to be way too hard. Right. Or then revisit it, you know, like, we couldn't make it through this. We got to put it, you know, later down through here. But that's how those original, oddly enough, the original ones are always the more popular ones. Right. So it's
because there's an art to it. And I hate to say that, because in our world, it sounds so fucking corny, but like to take everything that we know and to build it into a training system, and to just take so many different influences. Like, I had all my stuff from Scott Stevenson into working with Ben. Through Ben, I got to work so much with Cassim and Adam and Cody from N1. Adam Brammer, who's still at MI40, and he's a brilliant biomechanics guy in his own right, learning the nuances of isolation. But then Cassim really got into energy systems and metabolic work. And then somewhere along the line through Ben, I linked up with Jordan Shallow, and I ended up getting a ton. I have certifications through Prescript levels 1 and 2, and then basically all of his specialty courses, because Jordan would approach it from a more structural standpoint. Their whole thing is structure versus function, which is a bit outside of working on isolation work, but then the compounding work and the athletic preparation work that I did with Rob McIntyre, and then just getting more and more into peptides and understanding the Krebs cycle and cellular energy in that world, and then learning from my friends and my peers, guys like Anthony Castor, guys like Alex Keuchel, and, oh, you guys are putting this out because this peptide does this. All right, what's this system do? This is what, oh shit, that's what Cassim was talking about with metabolic training. So if this peptide is doing this to this, and this is going on, oh shit, going back to when Dave had me take insulin and do it with like this, that makes sense. Not you, Dave. You never had me take insulin. If you told me to, I would. But situationally, when Dave Palumbo was teaching me about insulin, I could learn about that and put that in there and this, that, and the other thing. You start going like, oh, fuck, now I understand how this works. That's why this worked. That's why this didn't work. And then just getting into it, it just becomes this, it's literally, it's an art form. There's got to be a cooler way to say it, because saying it's an art form is fucking...
Well, it's a lot of variables, but all those variables take into account that somebody knows how to auto-regulate the training to begin with. They know what their anchor is for the max effort or intensity, and they know what their minimum is. Like, this is the least I can do to not be a puss, you know, to not get weaker, and then to shuffle between those. The perfect segue, and you just said it, into this next segment is, I'm going to stick with the pre-workout, right? Because the outside of like Mountain Dew and shit that I would drink during training sessions that we just discovered, you know, helped, you know, and when it was first introduced to me, it was introduced at the same time as insulin, right? So the intra became, it helped. It certainly helped with the training session. It helped with size. It helped with the ability to train really fucking hard and then to be able to recover better from that. And the dose of the intra was going to be correspondent to the dose of the insulin. I'm not going to say either because we don't want people to do stupid shit. Right. So it would kind of play in there to where, another funny story is I used to be awful about just drinking anything while training. Right. Just terrible about it. And we were using the intra and we're using insulin. Right. So that's kind of dose dependent. No, I didn't pass out. None of those things kind of happen. But my fluid intake, I would never get through the stupid thing that John would want me to get through during the training session. I'd be lucky to get through like a quarter of it.
Yeah. I'm the same. I can't do that much while I train.
Terrible. Until the one day he walked in and he told me to take 3 times the insulin dose that I would normally take. That shit was gone within 45 minutes. Right. And we brought it back down after that, but that was just to prove to me, yes, you can actually put this shit down.
Right.
But the question I always had from my experience through all that is, without the insulin, what's this shit doing it? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's 100 grams of carbs and those carbohydrates are being shuttled, because of the insulin. Right. Now I take the insulin out and it's 100 grams of carbs.
Right.
It's just going to lead to a calorie surplus and make you fucking fat. Right. Because you get what I'm saying. And that's where the marketing of the stuff was kind of driving me crazy.
Right.
At that time, because you're telling these people that aren't using one of the main things that's helping to drive at least the dose, of the suggested dose, by the way, that's out there. And I get it, to sell more product and so forth. But I kind of always wondered is, if you're in the calorie surplus, does it even matter? That's the first question. And then if you're in the calorie deficit, I can see how it could, but at what dose?
Right. So it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. And the biggest thing about insulin is, first and foremost,
not the insulin dose, not the insulin dose, the intra, right? Yep. Because it's, in my opinion, it started from people that were using insulin.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Insulin made intra-workouts popular, not vice versa. That's unequivocal. Even if you didn't know about insulin when you started intra-workouts.
It's for Targa.
You started that because somebody else started it because of insulin, and they said this intra-workout is awesome because they didn't want to tell you to take insulin. Then you thought just the intra-workout was awesome.
Yes.
So yes, that was absolutely what was driving it. But we do have a benefit, and as we mentioned before, and as you just mentioned, it's going to be dose dependent based on the individual and based on the need and based on whether or not there's a surplus. I do not think there's really much of a need for an intra-workout if carbohydrate intake is at a certain level, because if your glycogen storage is topped off, putting more in isn't really going to do anything substantial whatsoever, because you already have full storage. It's going to be used. It's going to be replaced. Spiking your glucose a little bit higher isn't necessarily going to really do anything. Now, you can make a case for utilizing insulin in that regard because I can hyper shove a little bit more into my musculature. But even in that scenario, so I think you need to train to get there. That's my honest opinion. So with insulin and with intra-workouts.
Well, let's stay with the intra-workout, because the second question I would have on that would be, why not just sugar? Because isn't sugar going to be faster?
Well, here's the thing. It could be. And it really, it's not like, I'm not trying to get Anthony Almada to show up in my house with a shotgun or like a shotgun that shoots Vitargo at you, but it doesn't really matter beyond digestion. So every single carbohydrate that you eat, I don't care what it can be Vitargo, it can be table sugar, it can be a banana, it can be a pizza. All of the carbohydrates in whatever you're eating will inevitably find their way into being glucose. And then
Yeah.
glucose will do glucose things. If it's a pizza and there's a bunch of other stuff to digest, it's going to take a long time because it's literally slowing transit time and slowing absorption. If it's something that is like Vitargo, that's a very high molecular weight, that's literally just going to drop through your digestive system faster to get to the point where it can get into your blood a little
How
bit faster.
much faster? Because that's a question I've never been able to get answered.
Well, I mean, if you read the bottle, it's 80 billion times faster, and it's stupid to do anything other. But, you know, how much of that is marketing, we don't know. I'm sure there is some testing on it. I believe there is. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to use like a designer carbohydrate, it's literally going to be, as far as I'm concerned, based on what I digest best. When I implement carbohydrates intra-workout for any client or somebody on a consult call or somebody that's asking me for advice, I'm generally just going to say this many carbohydrates, maybe put some EAAs in it or whatever we might need to get in there at the same time with it. But then I just say, I like Vitargo, or I like Carbolin, or I like whatever. Or sometimes I tell them if they're really not in the bodybuilding world, or if there's somebody that I know they don't like to spend a ton of money on extra supplements, I'm not going to tell them to buy a $475 or whatever 5-pounder of Vitargo. I like Vitargo. I know I'm shitting on it, but comically so. I might just tell them to get Gatorade powder because it really matters what you tolerate. So if I had table sugar, my stomach would probably be fucked up. So I'm not going to go table sugar. I tolerate Gatorade fine, so I'll drink Gatorade. Sometimes I don't have a podcast at this level, but I have a pretty popular podcast. Sometimes people just send me shit. So if somebody sends me a good carb powder for intra-workout, yeah, I'll use it. And if they're a cool guy, I'll use it just based on the fact that I want to be able to promote their product or whatever it might be.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a moment because we do read the comments, and one of them that keeps popping up more frequently than not is, I can't believe this video doesn't get more views. Take a minute to subscribe, leave a comment, and share. It really does help.
So the carbohydrate's what matters. The digestibility of the carbohydrate is the other thing that matters, but that other thing is dependent on the individual. If you can drink table sugar and you just get super vascular and pumped up and your stomach is totally fine, table sugar it is.
Well, I get it. I mean, the sugar may not be the best option. It's just the thing that kind of always got me with that is if a diabetic passes out, you know, and you give them glucose tabs or sugar tabs, it's pretty fucking quick.
Yeah.
You know, see, so it's, you know what I'm saying? It's not like it's going to take an hour.
Yeah. The more simple the carb, the quicker it gets into your system at the end of the day. The only one I do want to add a caveat that might have a little bit of extra evidence to it would be cyclic dextrin. And I know that John was speaking a lot about that at one point. The whole thing with cyclic dextrin, it's the same thing in the, what is it, Febreze? Because essentially like the molecules, they're almost like cone shaped. So in Febreze, that will pull in things that are causing odors. In an intra-workout setting, that will pull in pieces of other things that you might want to load in with the glycogen, like essential amino acids and whatnot.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. There's the other things that are in it.
Yeah, that added caveat might make a case for if they're both well tolerated and I just walk up to you with cyclic dextrin and table sugar and go, maybe that's your main reason for reaching for the cyclic dextrin. But at the end of the day, it's glucose dependent because when you train, when your muscles contract, you elicit GLUT4 translocation. So GLUT4 translocation is basically you have all these receptor sites on your muscles for glucose, and you got to think of them all like storage units with a big garage door on it. When you train and contract your muscles under load, then that creates GLUT4 translocation. All those garage doors open up. So now all of the glycogen, all the glucose can enter, all the glycogen can enter and get stored based on that, not based on a need for insulin to shove it there. Because normally you need the insulin release to basically cram everything. It's basically like taking the carbs and pushing them against the storage unit door till eventually like the owner of the storage unit's like, what the fuck? Okay, and lets it in. If you have GLUT4 translocation, if you've been training, he just walks up and opens the door. So as the carbs come up, they just slide right in. So that's where the like anabolic window stuff really came from. It's GLUT4 translocation and the body's ability to pull in intramuscular glycogen independent of insulin. Now, if you release insulin, which you will because you're taking carbs in, it's not like it turns off your pancreas. That insulin is also shuttling it there. It's getting it there. And then if you were to take the exogenous insulin, that's just putting even more in and pushing it there. But I do think that, because I have people come to me all the time, especially now that I work a lot in just like the biohacking longevity world. And it's a lot of, in that world, it's a lot of people that are doing all these things to live forever. They come to me, they're like, I'm taking 75 peptides. I'm like, what's your training like? And they're like, my what? So we have to get into all of that stuff. in that world, even with things like insulin now, because people are starting to realize insulin's like a gun.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a gun guy and you know how to use a gun, I can give you a gun and I can sit here in front of you and I'll feel perfectly safe. If you're a complete jackass and I give you a gun, I better get the fuck out of here. So insulin, if you basically know how to measure it and how much to take, it's fine. Just don't take your shotgun and walk around the mall shooting it in the air. So you just need to know, you need to understand. The mistake everybody makes with that is it's the inevitable, we take some pro-hormones first, then we take some test, and then we take some D-bol, and then we take some tren, then we might take human growth hormone, and then insulin we take it last because it's scary. Most of the growth hormones getting measured. So on the slim pin, like 30 units,
Yeah,
it's like 3 IUs.
Yeah.
It's like take 3 IUs of Slin. Okay, 30. Why
Yeah.
am I tired? That's 9 out of 10 mistakes with insulin. But the
More.
thing is, the insulin, we're not putting insulin in than putting carbs in because it's like, I'm on insulin now, I need carbs. The whole idea with insulin should be you need to train your body's ability to utilize carbs. Train that GLUT4 translocation. Get the most bang for your buck that you can from driving your carbs high. Take your carbs as high as humanly possible without getting fat. And then when you couldn't possibly partition any more carbohydrates without putting on body fat, then add some more and add some insulin to make sure that pre or post workout, that's actually getting shoved into muscle cells. Don't just arbitrarily take the insulin and put the carbs up. Gradually train yourself. And people don't like to fucking hear that. People get pissy about that because it's like, yeah, but here's the problem, Drew. I want to take insulin now. It's like, that's a fucking dumb problem. Take it in 10 weeks. Let's take 10 weeks. Let's add 50 or 100 carbs per week, whatever, based on how muscular the guy or girl is. And insulin with women is amazing. I think insulin with women is safer than most anabolics, but you do it safe, you do it low dose, and you do it when you cause a need for it. Like why take it if you don't need it? And if it shuttles carbs, if you can shuttle the carbs on your own, why do you need the insulin? Work your way up till you couldn't possibly shuttle any more carbs on your own, then add the insulin, which is why the insulin's going to do best in settings of higher volume because that's what's driving your need to use more carbs and training your capacity to store more substrate, to store more intramuscular glycogen. And if you time it right, that can cause a crazy transformation in and of itself. You can use insulin to change your body composition like that. It just has to be done meticulously with the actual carbohydrate load. Now, obviously, you can just take it today with a bunch of carbs and then just shove all those carbs into muscle and get a huge performance boost from it. But as far as like long-term benefits of utilizing it for hypertrophy or for just generalized performance, I think adding carbs so you can't possibly add more carbs, and then adding insulin is the way to go. And that would be the setting where an intra-workout would be appropriate with insulin with elevated glucose throughout the course of the day. If you're doing 1,000 grams of carbs per day, I don't know if I need this intra. Well, I mean, if you're doing 1,000 a day, maybe make 200 of them in the para-workout window with your XYZ IUs of Humalog or whatnot, and then you're going to get some more bang for your buck out of that.
Could the insulin be being used in some cases because their diet and their gut health is so bad they're not able to absorb the carbohydrates as effectively as they should? In other words, if they cleaned up their ability to actually digest the carbohydrates they were eating, they wouldn't need the insulin to help drive.
So it's more of a case of metabolic flexibility there, because if it's an issue in digestion, if it's a transit issue, then that's potentially slowing down the time before those carbs are actually broken down and then entering the bloodstream as glucose, in which case, until they're glucose, the insulin has nothing to do with them anyways.
Sure.
So if anything, then it's like, if there's a digestive, if I eat a bunch of carbs and they just sit in my stomach for 3 hours, I'm going to start going hypoglycemic real quick. So it's one of those things where it's motility and assimilation is incredibly important, but that's kind of like your entry level, like getting into your system, literally entry level. And then once it's in your system, then it becomes a situation of more metabolic flexibility. So that's where we get into peptides are the most popular thing on the planet right now, just because everybody can sell them. But when we get into like mitochondrial optimization and whatnot, a huge role of optimizing mitochondria is to drive metabolic flexibility. And that's your ability to partition and utilize glucose, fats, alternating between fuel sources, using the right fuel source at the right time. That's an ability that you want to train. And you want to do that by training things like insulin sensitivity. Because if you've had a shit diet or you've been, carbohydrate heavy, Or people get themselves in this negative feedback loop where their cortisol is too high, so it's constantly dumping glucose into their blood, which is constantly causing their pancreas to release insulin. That constantly clears the glucose. That constantly releases more cortisol. That constantly releases more glucose. That constantly stimulates the pancreas to release more insulin. It's a feedback loop, and then they're just basically pumping and cranking insulin 24/7, and then it takes more and more insulin to do the job because insulin sensitivity at the receptor level is downregulating. So, and that's not even the issues of like the Leydig cells in the pancreas downregulating. Those are the cells that take in the insulin. They're getting so just fucking swarmed and crushed with insulin 24/7 that they become almost resilient to it. You need more insulin, so now the pancreas has to work harder. That's where the pancreas will eventually give out. But at the receptor level, that's where insulin sensitivity issues are falling into play.
Well, with the peptide space, because I've been involved in many discussions about this, is it's a weird space because it allows for extreme peacocking, positioning and so forth to be able to go out. And outside of growth hormone, insulin, outside of those, I haven't heard a use case. Let me reframe the question. The people who are asking me about peptides because they want to use the peptides, every use case that they want to use the peptides for, I know how they live. I know what their diet is. Every use case they're talking about can be corrected with their diet and when they fucking go to bed. It's like they want to take this for sleep, but yet their sleep patterns are fucking terrible. And it's a hack, right? But the hack for a lot of these people isn't going to solve the problem.
No.
Right? Because the problem is their sleep patterns are still going to be for shit. They're just going to take something that maybe knock them out. Be no different than taking fucking 2 Xanax and gulping it down with NyQuil, just to be able
probably way better.
To be able to knock yourself out,
yeah.
To be able to sleep and that's being capitalized on with not by everybody, right? The best people that I see in this space are the ones that are saying, look, all this stuff needs to be optimized first. Same thing with anabolics.
Right.
Let's optimize all this stuff first. Then if we do that, then maybe there is, a little upclick that we can see across the board. But in the real world, and you probably see it with the clients that come to you, that's not what they're looking for.
No.
So how do you manage that?
So it's so weird because we're seeing the same misconceptions from both sides that are interested in this world, because we have the people that have never really been gym guys or gym girls, and they just all of a sudden, hey, this is popular. This is topical. I have a couple spare bucks. I want to be lean, or I want to be tan, or I want to get into fitness. Tell me about these peptides. But then at the same token, we have people that are in our space that are competitive in whatever particular endeavor, that have been in the trenches and been reading the information and whatnot. And they're still saying like, oh yeah, let me take this and then things will get better. And a lot of the misconception I think comes from the world of anabolics, because for years we had all the same stuff for years. And we know that the foundational stuff, so sleep, diet, like just low stress levels, first and foremost, that should be the primary focus for everybody. But it really isn't, because the problem is if we sat down and we did table talk on optimizing sleep, or we did the episode strictly on insulin sensitivity from a dietary perspective, it would probably be an insanely informative episode that could help so many people. But the engagement and the viewership and like the numbers would be fucking terrible. So even in settings where the platform or the educator or the person bringing the information is asininely intelligent and with the best intentions, we have to like splice that stuff in there so people pay attention in the first place, because it's not sexy, it's not cool, and people really they don't really credit the profound nature of how it can change things, because oh, my mom's been telling me for years to get sunlight and to go to bed early. I don't want to pay an expert to tell me that. Well, it's like if I could break down for you all the like enzymatic processes that are happening when you do those things are happening better, you'll probably be a lot more into it, because it's a lot of the processes that you want to buy these expensive peptides to actually take care of. Now, on the other side of it, we have these misconceptions because, as you mentioned, if everything is in check from a foundational level, and you throw in anabolics, as long as everything's in check and as long as you're doing them right, you will get optimized results and you will minimize side effects. However, if all that shit is fucking wrong and you just go, I'm going to take a fuckload of tren, the tren doesn't stop working. You'll still be super jacked. Your libido will still be through the roof. You'll probably still punch a hole in drywall at some point in time. You'll still get really, really strong. You'll still get really, really lean. And you can have 1/10 of the boxes checked on the foundational side of it. It will still work. You can pin your tren at Tuesday at 3 p.m. and then again on Thursday at 1 in the morning. And then you could take 5 days off and then take double the dose on a Saturday afternoon while you watch TV. It's still going to do tren things. With a lot of these peptides, if the foundation's not there and they're not applied in the right settings for the right reason with the right realistic intentions, you're literally injecting expensive water. Like, it's not going to do anything because these are incredibly subtle. They are profound needle movers via a whole bunch of little acute benefits. Anabolics, growth hormone, insulin, like I know growth hormone and insulin are peptides technically. That's, you're dropping a bomb on the city. Preparation work will make the bomb more effective at clearing everything out. Peptide is one guy with a knife, and he's going in, he's stabbing your enemies one at a time. It can be incredibly profound or incredibly proficient, but that guy's got to do his job, and you got to give him the best ability to do his job. So the bomb, as long as it hits, it's blowing that shit up. That guy's got to be in the right place at the right time to hit the right target. Peptides are very much like that. Now, there are some that will go beyond that. So like your GLPs, now, you want to time them, not time them necessarily, but you want to take them, particularly things like retatrutide, you want to take them the right way in the right settings to take advantage of things like the glucagon component and whatnot, because that has to do with raising hormone-sensitive lipase, and that makes fat more readily available to break into your bloodstream. Then you want to make sure that you oxidize it, and it raises oxidation a little bit, but you want to pair it with a lot of parasympathetic work, like moving at a low heart rate to make sure what's broken down from the HSL is actually burned as energy. There's some nuance there. But the actual like GLP and GIP component of it, you're literally just not hungry, so you eat less. So that's a strong chemical signal. So that one, it's kind of hard to fuck up, at least from that regard. But things like MOTC, SS31, like even SLU, PP332, which everybody either loves or hates, if these aren't applied the right way in the right settings, they're really not going to do that much, if anything at all. But if you understand what's going on, like under the hood, like what are they doing? First of all, anybody that's taking mitochondrial peptides, or really peptides in general, like do yourself a favor and just read about the Krebs cycle. Like, how does the body make energy at a cellular level? Why does that seem important? Why is that important when it seems just like nerdy biology bullshit? Because that is predominantly, like, that's a big chunk of the process that these peptides are going in and manipulating. So when you understand the process that you're manipulating, you can manipulate it better. So if there were steroids that only made particular lifts more effective, like if tren only made your squats stronger, if D-ball only made your bench heavier, if fucking, I'm trying to think of a weird exotic one, but I'll just say equipoise made your deadlift better, you wouldn't take the deadlift equipoise and then go do bicep curls. You'd be like, I'm going to fucking do what this actually is for. Deadlift equipoise would be super cool if it existed. But nonetheless, like with these peptides, you want to take them for what they're going to do. So I take SS31 for energy. Why? Like, do you have that much overaccumulation of ROS that your oxidative stress is so high that it's dragging your energy down and you feel fatigued because of it? Because like, dude, if that's the case, you're fucked up. Like, you need to take 2 weeks off, sleep 10 hours a day, take a bunch of antioxidants. You got some fucking problems. So so-and-so told me SS31 for energy. I understand why they said that, but do they understand why they said that? Or the whole MOTC and SS31, which one do you take first? This is what you have to do. It's like, cool, show me the study where we took athletes and biohackers and people trying to optimize muscle tissue and drop body fat, and the one where one took SS31 first and one took MOTS. That doesn't exist. So it's basically the only way to approach this is you have to go in with an open mind, but you also have to learn exactly what these things are doing. And you have to learn the processes that they're actually changing or manipulating, or at least being components of, and then apply them based on that. Because if you're just going, so-and-so said to do this for this, you might get something out of it. but you're going to get so much more out of it otherwise. Like SLUPP332, it's a ERR antagonist. It will basically make the mitochondria, it'll force it to work harder and pull in more substrate for energy, substrate being fat and glucose. Now, it does tend to favor fat over glucose, and it becomes glycogen sparing. That said, I'm not a big fan of using it before I'm weight training, because even though it's not flipping that switch to the point where you can't use glucose, because if you couldn't use glucose while you're training, that would be a huge problem. What we talked about before about driving so much ROS, it would be insane. That would be an issue. But so far, it seems that SLUPP332 will hyperdrive substrate utilization. And when you're training and need glucose, it'll still let you switch to glucose. But other than when you absolutely need it, it'll help you burn more body fat. So to me, that's really not something I'm going to take if I'm trying to maximize hypertrophy, or even if I'm trying to maximize fat loss, but I'm going to go train with weights today. It might make more sense for me not to take SLUPP332 on a day where I'm going to go train with weights. Maybe I'll just take that on the days where I'm just doing cardio. And I better be doing cardio if I'm taking a peptide for fat loss, but I haven't done any cardio or I'm not in a deficit. Like, why aren't I doing the things that will take me to those goals? And I'm just trying to take the drug that enhances the things.
Well, I think that's where the lost opportunity is. And you've been around the space for a long time. So as I say what I'm about to say, you're going to understand how things have kind of unfolded, where let's go back in time to where anabolics really weren't discussed for good reason. It's illegal. I mean, there's a lot of things, and it would get you demonetized and all this other kind of shit. So it wasn't really discussed. Some people just flat out lied about it, but most people just pivoted away. They just avoid the conversation. When I sponsored athletes, that was part of the agreement. It's just pivot away. It keeps everything off.
Could you imagine if you had a coupon code for DECA in 2010?
Oh yeah, you would be fucked.
We'd be retired already.
Yeah. Not only that, I mean, you would. I had a whole podcast with Rick Collins about this. You would end up being on some kind of list, and at some point in time, somebody could potentially show up at your door, and leverage you to be able to figure out where you're getting it from. It was a different environment, right? But as soon as the conversations were not being canceled, I know people that had YouTube accounts speaking about this shit that were canceled 20 years ago. Just because of all this. But then it starts being spoken about. Then and when it first gets spoken about, it is in the conversation of training, and dieting and so forth. It's all kind of in that same conversation. Slowly over a period of time, you start to see content that's just on that. It's just on the steroids, right? And then those conversations always tend to fall towards trend is the strongest, most anabolic.
Right.
Context is now removed, because now all we're doing is we're comparing parabolin with test, with DECA, with equipoise, and that's the whole conversation, which is very particular to a very specific group.
Yes.
Right? That very specific group makes up about 5% of the people who are actually going to consume that content. The other 95% don't know the nuance, because the nuance isn't being presented with the conversation.
Right.
It's just what's better out of all this. We skip forward another 5 to 10 years, it's all about fucking trend, which if you go back to when trend was just essentially parabolin, most people didn't really use it because it was $18 an ampule, and you could buy test for fucking $5 an ampule. It was way cheaper. I can take more tests instead of so it wasn't even really part of the conversation, even though everybody knew it was way stronger and it kind of make you fucking crazy. And it had a ridiculous half-life. I think parabolin might have been like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
For the
half-life. Thing we have now, I think, is like Tren Hex, I think is.
Yeah. That shit lasts forever. So if it don't work well with you, you're kind of like got this ugly girlfriend you're going to be dating for the next 5 months. So then it all becomes that, right? So then the downstream effect of that is everybody wants to take trend, and then the people that are coming up that are just new into all this shit think that is the apex.
Right.
That just anabolics are the apex. So when we look, we wonder why all these kids are jumping on steroids way too soon. It became the fucking apex. So when they go search for that and they listen to any of the experts or people that are talking about it, there's zero context in regards to the diet should be right, the training should be right, all these other things should be right.
Mm-hmm.
So two things happen. You have the one group that's just like, fuck it, I'm taking everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which there is that personality. I was that, you were that. I mean, that personality is there. We're not changing those people. But the other group are the ones that are coming in that are really interested, and they just clicked off.
Mm-hmm.
They just tuned off.
Right.
Right. So it's happening in the peptide space the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening through there. The peptide conversation's bringing people in, especially with the GLP-1s. It's bringing people in to the fitness community for the very first time, right? Somebody sees something that might help with mental focus, and it's a peptide or whatever it is. They want to learn about it. They go and they listen to somebody speak about that. And what they really need to do is to fucking train, right? And to exercise. Context has been removed. So then they think, I just need this. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then as you walk down that path, as it keeps moving forward, then you have a lot of what we see today. You have a lot of people who are taking anabolics that just don't fucking train hard, right? And they'll make progress for a while. Then it's going to drop off because they never learned how to fucking train, or they never learned how to fucking eat and all these other things, right? You see where I'm going, what I'm trying to explain here?
Yes. Yep.
How would you explain what I'm saying in a different way? Because that was a really shitty way to do it.
No, that makes perfect sense. So I think things like tier lists, which are super popular right now, these are a great example of something that's contributing to this problem, because a tier list, it's the same template everybody uses now. It's this little color-coded thing or whatever. But I don't want to shit on it too badly because I have friends that do them, and I don't.
They work.
I don't want to hate on anybody that plays the game. So I try to play the game in some aspects, and in some aspects I'm just like, that's just too fucking cringy, and I'm probably costing myself money by not doing it, but whatever. But these tier lists and things that are similar are literally just giving you like, was it like S tier is the best all the way down to like, that's like an A through F or whatever it is. There's best and there's shittiest. And it's like, here's the anabolics tier list. Here's the peptide tier list. Here's the growth hormone secretagogue tier list. Here's the blah, blah, blah tier list. And my whole thing with it is, I mean, yeah, there's some things that I'm kind of like, all right, why would anybody really do that now? And it's even hard for me to think of a specific one, because it's kind of like under what context, like under what situation. Like now the most popular thing to do is to shit on nandrolone because nandrolone is depressing to the amygdala and it causes depression-like symptoms and it dulls your brain and this, that, and the other thing. The minute that I started learning about how the brain works in conjunction with steroids and things like the response of the amygdala and the excitatory process and whatnot, I went, I think this might be why I always liked nandrolone, because I'm a high anxiety person. Like my Achilles heel is my anxiety spikes. And if I have a shitload of work to get done, it takes me a good 15, 20 minutes to, all right, let's go. Because my mind's just scatterbrained with anxiety. Every time that I ever took nandrolone, felt like $1 million. So I did a little experiment last year and I'm like, I haven't really taken anything anabolic in a long time. Let me put in like 400 mgs a deca, see what happens. And like my workflow was perfect. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Because that little bit of a blunting effect took me, that was somebody that was high anxiety, and just brought me down just enough that my focus was there. Like even my girl's like, you're in such a good mood right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm on steroids. She's like, how the fuck does that work? I'm like, it's complicated. Don't worry about it. But again, I'm not saying that's literally not me saying, if you have anxiety, take a bunch of deca. Not somebody still will, but I'm not saying that. But again, it's like, this is the best or this is the worst. Well, under what context? So I've spoken to Jake Benson at length, who's brilliant with how the brain works and little like tiny facets of just different ways to approach things. He coaches a lot of professional MMA athletes. And I won't go into it because it's his thing, but he suggested a protocol based on low-dose Dianabol in the morning, first thing on off days, on rest days. And there's a whole process that elicits that's really cool, but that's his, and I don't want to bastardize it or get it wrong or steal it. But that's somebody that if you haven't spoken to him before, brilliant guy to have on. But there's just, again, it's like under what context? Because now we're getting inundated with all this information. And then on top of that too, that's why I made the comment before, like imagine if you had a coupon code for drugs back in the day, not only legal implication wise, but like imagine if they were legal. Like 20 years ago, if we had coupon codes for gear and nobody cared, like there'd be so much more bad information than there already was because everybody would be trying to sell something. And now it's insanely, I have 5 friends that have opened peptide companies in the last 2 years. And that's not counting just peers, people I know, people I don't know. It is so easy to open a peptide company. And that's not me even saying, I know the fear mongering thing is to, you got to be careful where your peptides come from and domestic over China and this, that, and the other thing. Yes, a highly credited lab that's set domestically is probably going to turn out the highest quality stuff. But let's be real. Most of the peptides that are out there, they're getting tested because everybody else is sending them in for third-party testing. So nobody wants to be the one company that doesn't. So people are trying to like out-test each other. And, oh, I have testing. I tested this. I tested that, this, that, the other thing. For the most part, a lot of the peptides, at least from the companies that we've all heard about, they're fine. They're okay. That fear-mongering bullshit is literally just to position somebody's other peptides over somebody else's other peptides. For the most part, they're fine. But the problem is there's so many companies and they have so many affiliate codes going out there. And I work with a couple different peptide companies. I don't work with anybody exclusively because I don't want to come off like a shill and just be like, I'm trying to make as much money from this. The day that I count on money from a coupon code to pay one of my bills is the day I need to pack this up and go away. I have no problem with mailbox money. You want to just Zelle me a couple grand because a bunch of people bought Mott C because I made a video about it? I will fucking accept that. I will go fucking buy a bunch of toys for my dogs. I will fucking go to the nicer steakhouse for a few days. I'll go out to fucking hibachi or whatever the fuck. But I'm not going to count on it because I don't want to be a salesperson. So I work with a bunch of different companies because I have a lot of friends that have companies. I want to help them all out. And some companies have things at better prices than others. Some companies have things that other people don't have. But my biggest frustration with them is when they have like sales groups, and I'm not shitting on anybody specifically. Somebody's going to watch this and be like, dude, what the fuck? And I'm not saying that it's wrong or that it's immoral. It's not bad. But I get frustrated when there's sales groups with all the affiliates and they're treating it like any other business. All right, team, whoever sells the most of this today, we're going to bonus you this much and we're going to this, that, and the other thing. Because then you're just saying, get out there and sell drugs. Mm-hmm. And 99% of these affiliates just know this drug is good for fat loss or for this or for that. So the education is really not there. And again, I can't say cut it all off because then I don't get to talk about peptides. Yeah. I don't get to educate about them. Again, I don't want to say I don't care about making money off of them. Money's fucking great. I love money. If anybody's watching this, you want to send me some fucking money. I'm not going to turn it down. But situationally, I feel like I should be, or we all should just be educating people about peptides, what they do, how to use them. Part of that comes with educating people about the Krebs cycle and about all these various biological processes within the body, which is tough because a lot of this shit's boring. Mm-hmm. Like I have to talk so much about inflammation and oxidative stress that I'm fucking bored of it. But I need to find different ways to get people to understand what those things are, what redox is, what metabolic flexibility is, because if somebody doesn't understand those things, then I can't really tell them this peptide is good for this because I know they won't really understand. So I just wish that there was more focus on education in the space, but you can't have like peptides that are legal to sell through the research space with a coupon code and make them profitable and make sure that every bikini girl with a peptide code is also studious in biochemistry. It's not going to fucking happen. But that's why I've kind of made it my goal to research the fuck out of these things, do a lot of experimentation on myself. And then I work with a lot of people that want to use these peptides. And in some cases, I have a ton of experience with what they want to do. In some cases, like one company just came out with a recombinant follistatin, which is basically a myostatin blocker, which can build insane amounts of muscle really quickly, possibly. And some people are having great results with it. Some people are having okay results with it. Some people aren't having much in terms of results with it. But people would come to me and say, hey, I want to take this. Can you monitor it or help me out so I'm doing everything else perfectly? And then I have to have the conversation like, I'm aware of what follistatin is. I'm very well studied in follistatin. I've never worked with a recombinant follistatin. This stuff is brand new. I know the guys that are making it. I've talked to them. I think I understand it. They told me the process. I understand things about the process. Let's watch and let's rock and roll with it. I think more of that needs to go on, but I just can't I can't wrap my head around, I don't understand how this drug works, but you should take it because it's good.
Well, here's what's going to happen. And I usually don't make predictions because we've seen this before, right? How many of the good coaches that are out there that are working with people on their performance, health, fitness, longevity, whatever, how many of them are 100% only making content on supplements? Zero.
Yep.
Go back 20 years. How many people were making all content on just supplements? A fuck ton.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are still around.
Nope.
All right. Now, how many of the people that are working with people in those spaces, you know, to be able to help them with the performance goals, longevity and all that, use supplements as part of their protocols? All of them. Right. Even if it's just a general multivitamin.
Yep.
You get where I'm going here?
Mm-hmm.
So the ones that are building their whole identity on this peptide space will not be around in 5 years.
No. Because when it's less topical, they're either moving on to the next thing or they've already been kind of washed out.
Dude, the next thing could be a long time away.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about the difference between like creatine and then a whole bunch of bullshit supplements,
Mm-hmm.
and then what we're seeing now in the peptide space, you know, that's a long time to be able to build a sustainable business,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that could crash,
Right.
you know, so it's the balance, right? Because they're going to be part of protocols. We live in some crazy times right now where there's not a day that I don't go on the internet and I see some BS crap about this research study or this research study. This isn't new. I've been in this industry for 4 decades. One thing that's helped me is 8 years ago, the mass research review started and became a godsend. The mass research team are professional researchers that are also meatheads. So they've done this great job of being able to take all these topics and put them into this research review that I get every month. I'm excited to partner with them. I spoke with Eric Helms about this on the podcast. It's simple, it's easy. They're offering a 20% discount to all podcast listeners. The code is elitefts20. When you join, you get the research review, which is going to be sent to you every single month. It has 7 to 9 articles in there. The archive, which is 1,500 articles, thousands of videos. Just head over to massresearchreview.com and use the code elitefts20. The link will be in the description.
The problem is this is the one difference from when supplements were really like all the craze. Like back when like Muscular Development had like 57 pages of ads and everybody wanted to be sponsored by a supplement company, which you don't really see much anymore. And that was a whole different era. But now we're doing this in conjunction with social media being at a level that it's never been at before. So when supplements were big, everybody wanted to be a sponsored athlete. Everybody wanted to be a sponsored bodybuilder. This bodybuilder jumped from this company to that company. This powerlifter jumped from this company to that company. Now, everybody has a platform and more people are catching on and then more people are copying each other and it just sensationalizes things more and more to a point where, you know, I'll work a lot within, I was mentioning that biohacking community and whatnot. And I've had a similar intake form for probably 15 years now. And it's a fairly extensive intake form because I want to know everything that you're doing when you come to me with whatever goal. Because whatever you're doing, the sum of all the things that you're doing right now are making you the you that you are right now. So your training split, your drugs, your supplements, your rest and recovery, everything that Dave does makes Dave the Dave that he is today. And if you want to work with me to become the Dave with shredded abs or the Dave with a heavier bicep curl or can dunk a basketball or wants to fucking go paragliding, I'm just thinking of the weirdest fucking goals for you. Whatever you come to me with, then I have to make adjustments to your current protocol that will take us in that direction or remove bottlenecks that will keep us from getting in that direction or like bottlenecks that would like kill you. Like I drink a gallon of whiskey a day. Well, I don't care what our goal is. Let's try and get that turned down a little bit. But whatever it might be, I need to know what you're doing in order to get you where you're going. And even 5 years ago, that like supplement section, supplement meds, PEDs, be like, I take 250 a test a week, take a creatine monohydrate, like citrulline, about 10 grams. I take 5 milligrams of Cialis maybe. In the past couple of years, it's been like a fucking grocery list. And it's like, okay, like housewife in Kansas that wants to build bigger glutes and trains pretty seriously, but is a full-time accountant with 6 kids. You're taking 42 peptides every day? Oh yeah, well mostly. Oh, also I just bought Well, why? Oh, I'm in so-and-so's private group and they said it was good. Oh, I saw a YouTube video that said this was good. Oh, Dr. So-and-so said that if I'm doing this, I have to do this with it. oh, this one's really good for my brain. Oh, this one's really good for my left foot. Oh, this one makes my ovaries rainbow colored. Like whatever it might be. It's like, oh, I have all, we just have all this. Can you imagine 20 years ago if somebody's like, Dave, I need you to help me get in like really good shape here, and I'm running the gear protocol, but I need to know how to like optimize it or what else I can add in. I think I need to add some more in. And you're like, all right, what are you taking? And they're like, everything. It's like, everything? Like Trent, Halo, Deca, NPP, testosterone. Oh yeah, all the testosterone, propionate, I'm taking Sustanon, I'm taking all of it. Like, what steroids are you taking? Yes. Like, what the fuck do you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And then like they're coming to me, and not for nothing. I mean, I'm not like the most expensive guy in the world, but I'm not cheap. And that was the worst sales pitch for somebody on the fucking planet. So remember when Drew said he wasn't cheap? I'm not even going to look into it. But it's like, you're coming to me for help, and then I have to tell you, okay, stop taking 90% of this. And we can add them back in where they make sense, but we're probably going to take things out. And it's just like, what? Like, I can't, it's like, dude, you can't optimize. It's the fucking worst word in the industry. It's been bastardized. I probably said it 3 times myself, but you can't optimize everything at once. Let's focus on what we need to focus on. And then you don't even understand what these things are. You just, oh, this is good for mitochondria. Like go ahead and take the recommended dose of everything that's deemed good for mitochondria and see what happens. See when you grow a third arm out of your forehead. Like, you need to understand why you're taking things, not just they're good for this and this is a this that I want to be good at. Like, there's so much more that goes on to it. I don't think anybody right now taking like the Glow or Clo stack know why they're taking it, other than like, this is good for skin. How's it good for skin? Good. Like, how? Like, they just see and they go. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too, because I'll make a lot of peptide content because I want to put out there, hey, I know how this stuff works. And then it gets like, oh, you said it's really good. I'm like, lots of stuff is really good. Like, it's like, I like blondes, brunettes, redheads, but I can't have them all at once. My girl's going to hate that joke. But like, my point is, it's like, you can't, like, just because it's good, you can't just do everything that's good. Oh, this is good for the goal, I'm going to do all of it. If you don't understand how it's working, there's half of it's going to be redundant. It's going to be a waste. And then I don't like to talk about long-term sides because everybody does that. Well, we don't have long-term studies on this. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to fucking focus on that because chances are you're not going to get turbo cancer in 6 months from like a course of MOTS-C. Is it a possibility? I guess, but it's not even to me worth bringing up. I'll just point out we don't have long-term studies, but chances are it's probably fine. But it's more like, what are you doing that's just wasting your time, wasting your money, or it's going to make you be one of the guys that say, I took peptides, they didn't do shit. It's like, well, yeah, because you just like fucking power fucked a bunch of random drugs into your system and just, you went, why aren't I better at everything yet?
Well, that is the industry, right? And that's where, the advice I give to the people in the space is you have to be able to always provide that global perspective. Because if we walk into, if we drive down to CVS and we walk down the supplement aisle, right? You could make a video just on vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. You could be on everything that's in there, right? The whole spectrum. So there's probably 100 fucking products in there.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now, out of all that, you can make a video exactly why any of these vitamins are vital. And go through the pathway to which they work and everything which they do, right? The fact of the matter is most people don't need it because they're getting it through their diet, right? But you can make that video. You get what I'm saying? And if YouTube was around 40 years ago, they all would have been made.
Yes. Right?
Nobody's making them now, right? D, right? I mean, there's certain things that people are going to be deficient in, which you're going to put in their protocols, you're going to put in their programs. I see peptides playing that same type of role, right? To where it will play itself out, right? And it's going to play itself out faster than people think because far too many are going to be like the lady you described, right? They're going to come in, they're not going to have the environment for it to actually do what it's supposed to do. So they're going to say, and I've heard this more than 100 times, the BP157 didn't do shit for my fucking joints, right?
Mhm.
They're not doing anything else.
Right.
Right. So they're still high inflamed. They're eating like shit. Their training sucks.
Mhm.
You know, all the other factors that are really creating the issue are still there, and they thought it would work like Vicodin.
Right.
All right. And it's not Vicodin.
You can put a fire hose on a fire, but if you're
Yes.
also lighting a fire next to the fire, then it's like there's not less fire. Like you need to. There needs to be an understanding of it. And that's what drives me crazy. I think AI is the coolest fucking thing on the planet, and I use the fuck out of it. But I use AI to save myself time.
Sure.
I use it to schedule things. I use it to pull research studies. I'll use it to say, hey, bullet point everything in each of these research studies so I can read through and go, ooh, that's a good one. And then I'll pull up that research study. And then I want to actually understand, because it's not going to tell me whether or not the research or the parameters around the research study were dog shit or if they're actually applicable. So people are getting lazy. Something happened a few months ago that I found it hilarious. I'm not going to mention any names, but I saw a bunch of very popular peptide influencers start referring to SLU-PP332 as a PPAR antagonist or agonist. A PPAR agonist is a drug like GW501, 516, cardarine, or even telmisartan, the ARB, works in that fashion. And it can burn a little bit of body fat. It's good for reduction of visceral fat. They do really cool things. They're good for even cardarine, GW501, 516 is great for increasing HDL. It increases your endurance. Cool drugs. It started telling everybody, or everybody started saying SLU-PP332 is a PPAR agonist. It's not. It's a ERR receptor agonist, which is totally different. It's the same in that they're acronyms, but it's not the same thing in any way, shape, or form. So I saw somebody with 100,000 followers. Oh, SLU-PP332 is a PPAR agonist. That's fucking weird. Then a few days later, I saw somebody else do it. I'm like, that's fucking weird. And then a few days later, I'm like, did they just discover this? And what the fuck where did that guy get his finger on the pulse? Because I know that guy's an idiot. What the fuck? So then I pulled out my chat GPT. Tell me about SLU-PP332. SLU-PP332 is a PPAR agonist. And then I literally just followed it up. I went, why did you say that? It's not. And then scanning the internet. You're right. I apologize. There's recently been a large amount of information on certain sales websites mislabeling it. And upon deeper research, you are in fact correct, Drew. It is not a PPA. I'm like, yeah, fucking I knew. But they didn't, because they're just using it and then posting it verbatim, or at least some of the ones that are really smart. They take out the dashes in the chat GPT lingo so it doesn't look written by chat GPT. But it's the same thing. And if you pay a little attention on how things work, then you can make these decisions. So if you want mitochondrial peptides in a minute, so SS31 binds to cardiolipin. That's the membrane inside the cell. It's basically like putting an Iron Man suit on the inside of the cell. So when ROS, reactive oxygen species, are sparking off, those sparks are creating less soot on the inside of the cell. The cell is more resilient to oxidative stress and reactive oxygen species. It makes the most sense to run it if anything is happening where you're driving up ROS. You're overtrained, you're overtired, you're overworked, or you have some sort of condition that's driving ROS, and you need your cells to be more resilient to ROS. Or maybe you're taking a bunch of other peptides that drive ROS up, and you have to manage that as a prophylactic. SLU-PP332 is a small molecule. It's not the exact right way of saying it, but it essentially increases the spin within the Krebs cycle, which makes it pull in more substrate. You pull in more glucose and more fat to create ATP more efficiently. That's why you pull in more fuel, and that's why you spit out more energy. It also tends to favor body fat. That's why you get leaner on it, but it allows you to switch over to glucose, which is why you can still train on it. MOTS-C creates the entire infrastructure in which the mitochondrial peptide has to work. It creates a better environment. It improves insulin sensitivity. It improves the cell's overall ability to do everything it needs to do in its environment. It's basically kind of this wipe the slate clean. That's why you only have to do it a few times a year. The Dr. Seeds course or protocol, I think, and I'll just give that one out because it's Dr. Seeds' and not mine, but I steal it all the time because it's great. Take 5 milligrams Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 3 or 4 weeks, and then do 3 or 4 weeks of just doing that once per week. And then that basically resets the playing field. The whole process is better. Insulin sensitivity is better. The cell is better at pulling in substrate. The cell is better at spitting out energy. It just makes everything a little bit better. Recent study that just came out on it, it also makes it a little bit more resilient to ROS, reactive oxygen species. So that study completely shits on everybody that's like, this one has to be before SS31 or this one has to be after a different. No, they both do that. Look into the other mitochondrial. So 5-amino-1-MQ essentially drives more NAD where you want it to go in the cells that you want it to go into. It enhances NAD uptake. NAD uptake enhances the action of the electron transport chain. That pulls in substrate more, similar to SLU-PP332, not necessarily with the propensity to favor fat as much as glucose. So it will pull in more substrate from just wherever you need it, which is why it can drive your workouts a little bit harder. But in a setting of a low heart rate environment where your body's already using body fat for energy, it'll pull in more body fat, which is why you can get leaner on it. It also is great to run in conjunction with NAD+, or if you're taking NMN or NR or 1-MNA, because it directs that into the cells you want it to go into and not the cells that you don't want to go into. You don't want to feed senescent cells or zombie cells that you want to get killed off, and you don't want NAD going in there because then a cell might stay past its welcome, and then technically it could become something dangerous down the line. So that helps. You can also do apigenin for that, which is celery extract. So apigenin in celery, but it's primarily chamomile. But these are just like different examples of how this works. So if I want to drive training output, 5-amino-1-MQ, I could also get a little bit leaner on it. If I want to get leaner, SLU-PP332. If I'm training really, really hard and just like beating the shit on myself, SS31. Or if I have been training, I'm just going to take a recovery block, SS31. Or if it's, it's got to be a reason. If I'm about to start a big block and I just want to optimize everything, I want insulin sensitivity better, I just want my cells to just have a better environment to work in, MOT-C. If somebody's really deficient, if that whole system's not deficient mitochondria, but if it's just bogged down and you need it for energy, that MOT-C can provide a lot of energy. That's why some people take it and they go, I feel like $1 million. And some people take it and just go, If you feel like $1 million on it, that whole system, that environment, that ecosystem in which your mitochondria are doing their thing, it's more bogged down, which is why you notice more from it. Some people just need a tune-up. They all get way deeper than that, way deep. I can do 3 hours on each one of them, so I would definitely need notes for that. I'm not claiming to be like some sort of like peptide savant, but situationally, that's kind of like surface level. If I'm going to do it really quickly, that's what they do. But even that exemplifies, there's different use cases for all these. And also I can see how they bleed together and how they can enhance each other. But now I kind of know like, so probably shouldn't take SS31 because my main thing is just fat loss and I feel fine and I'm doing really low volume and I really haven't even started to push myself yet and I'm perfectly healthy. Like I've been doing MOT-C off and on for 6 months. Maybe I don't need that in my next fat loss block. Maybe it's still doing its thing. Like, I'm not doing any cardio or any steps or any walking. Maybe SLU-PP332. I don't know why I keep saying that wrong today. Maybe that's not the best one for me right now. But then you can deep dive and then you can go over the crossover and all of it. But my goal is to be able to do this for every single peptide that comes out, like as soon as the information is available. Because if you just have a little bit more beyond the it's good for this, then you really know who's going to benefit the most from it. So you can go into like senolytic protocols rather, with things like FOXO4 that kills off the zombie cells. But that one's going to get popular soon because that can have a lot of positive effects on things like chronic inflammation and pain. But then people are going to throw that in with a Wolverine stack and they're going to take it too much and they're going to start killing good cells. And if you just say generalistically, these are good for this, in a world where they're accessible, they're trendy, and they're kind of like in vogue, people are just going to start taking them. And then I get more people coming to me being like, here's more drugs than you have ever taken at a single time in your life, and you're a fucking psychopath.
Well, that's the thing is that they don't understand the specific use cases, so it just all gets thrown on top.
And they're looking at like it's protein powder. Like it's just like, I mean, granted, it's, again, I hate fear mongering. They're generally all pretty safe. But don't just, like, again, I want it to be accessible because I want to have access to it. And I want people that know what they're doing to have access to it. I want to help people to use them to improve anything, be it cosmetic goals or just general health, because there's so much in terms of just improving your actual health span and lifespan with them as well too. But if we're just taking every one that's good for everything, because I want to be good for everything, you're about to see that with bioregulators, I guarantee you. So bioregulators are the shorter peptide sequences that are more organ specific. There's bioregulators for your eyes, there's bioregulators for your liver, for your heart, for your kidneys, for general circulation, for different glands. They're amazing. But it's kind of like the vitamins at CVS. Like, oh shit, I need to take all of these. Like, It's not just like, oh man, I've been in a really intense fat loss phase. I've been stressing de novo lipogenesis. My liver's a little like just overtaxed, and did a couple cycles of orals, like a bunch of them actually in my 20s. I should probably run this like Livogen like bioregulator. It's just really going to help my liver just kind of heal a little bit and whatnot. Versus like, oh yeah, I want my pancreas to be good, and yeah, I want my kidneys to be good. Oh yeah, to think of it, yeah, my duodenum could be fucked up. I don't know, maybe it is. I should take the duodenum peptide. I don't know if there's a duodenum peptide, but like, oh yep, let me take the esophagus one. Like, oh, there's one for eyebrows. I got to fix my eyebrows right now too. All right, yeah. Let me take the butthole one. Like that thing. There's blood sometimes when I push too hard. Like,
Yeah.
you can justify anything, and then it's just kind of like, all right, now I'm taking 1,000 drugs, and it's like, why?
Yeah. Were there any topics you wanted to go over I didn't bring up?
I think we covered a lot of it, man. My biggest thing is just we have so much cool shit out there. Like, even outside the peptides, we have this entire world with things like injectable L-carnitine. There's injectable creatine available now. There's diisopropylene dichloroacetate, and there's all these endurance drugs and all this cool stuff that we can use to leverage for performance and for health purposes and whatnot. And they're going to have their time in the sun also. They've been around for a little while, but somebody's going to get bored about talking about peptides, and they're going to bring these things up. And I just want people to understand that these things are all tools. But again, we're in a world right now where there's so much stuff that we have access to. And when you understand how things work, you can go miles further than you'd be able to if you didn't understand how they work. Like, I'm nothing special. So my whole story was just kind of a dumb kid in high school, wasn't even much of an athlete. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I needed to be an athlete. I needed to look like a bodybuilder. I was relentless in trying to do that. And then somewhere along the line, I realized, wow, I just keep managing to link up with these really smart people, and I think that's super cool. And now I want to be one of these really smart people. And that led me to everybody that I've learned from, everybody I've networked with. It culminated in starting my own podcast, which it's like getting a consult call with an expert every single fucking week. It's like highway robbery. It's amazing. But I keep pulling all this information, and it's all like, okay, cool. Like, let me know how this works. Let me know how this works. Let me know how this works. And there's a lot. But the same token, like I was saying before, there's like a simplicity to it also. So we just need to understand the systems in which our body works. And then we need to apply these different things. And that's peptides, that's general PEDs, that's training stimulus, that's cardio. Like, we didn't talk much about cardio, and that's a whole other thing that people don't really like to listen to, but being proficient in every zone of cardio, every form of HIIT, every form of threshold training, everything from just parasympathetic beta oxidation, that's an Alex Keuchel term. I think he's the one that coined it, but just walking in a low heart rate environment, but just continuously moving because you'll burn more body fat versus getting your heart rate up over 130 and burning maybe a little bit more glucose, but driving more of a cardiac benefit versus going max effort for like 20 seconds versus like Nordic 4x4s where it's max effort, but the type of max effort that you can sustain for 4 whole minutes, which is obviously going to be less effort than 20 seconds. You do a minute to recover. Training these different thresholds are going to train different fuel sources, different energy systems, and they're going to benefit your entire system as a whole to be flexible. Andy Triana said once, and I've been stealing it ever since, you want to be every type of jacked. You want to primarily be the type of jacked that you want to be for your immediate goal. If you want to be the strongest motherfucker on the planet, you need to be powerlifter jacked. If you want to have the best physique on the planet, you need to be bodybuilder jacked. If you want to be the fastest man on the planet, you need to be, I don't know, marathon or sprinter jacked, whatever the fuck that is. CrossFit jacked, high rocks jacked, whatever type of jacked, but you should be every type of jacked. So you should be proficient in everything. You should be most proficient in your main goal, knowing that proficiency across the board, these things all will contribute regardless of how far away it is from your main goal. Just be jacked, be proficient, be healthy. And the way that you learn to do that is just you learn how everything works. And don't just settle for, I do this because it works. Some people will do that. Some people just want to be told what to do, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The type of person that's watching this podcast is the type of person that wants to level up and know a little bit more than other people. So the real way that you level up is you just understand how it works. And also, I got to end with this. Understanding how it works is not being science-based. Science-based and optimize are the worst things that I can ever fucking hear now, because it just fucking sucks. And it's in complete contradiction to the world I came up in, where shut the fuck up, keep your mouth closed, keep your eyes and ears open, take in as much information as you can. Don't talk until you have something to contribute. And I went over a decade feeling that I had nothing to contribute. It was borderline imposter syndrome. And then I was like, I think I can add to the space. And still, I'm just like, I need to learn more before I put this out there. I'm like, no, I know enough to put this out there. I know, or at least I know people that I can reach out to and say, hey, help me understand this a little bit more. Because when you understand all this and you can apply all of it, you're going to be able to help yourself get to your goals better. You're going to be able to help more people, and you're going to be able to make a bigger impact, and you're not going to waste time doing it. And if you just marry the studies, I'm only going to do something that's been peer reviewed and published and this, that, and the other. It's like, motherfucker, have they published and peer reviewed everything? Like, what the fuck do you think, like, Dr. So-and-so Dickweed is doing? Is he doing a different study every single day that everything you've ever heard of is either proven true or false? We have some studies that conclude that there are ways to do specific things that are probably better than other ways for a larger subset of people. But that doesn't mean everything else doesn't work. There might be 10,000 wrong ways to do something, but there's also 5,000 right ways. And it's all based on the individual. That's training volume, that's intensity, that's frequency, that's PEDs, that's peptides, that's supplements, that's blood work, that's everything. Understand how it works so you can understand different ways to get the results that you want, and then learn how to apply the different ones to different people based on different people being different fucking people. And sometimes it's just based on what's been working for 20 or 30 years. What's been working for 20, 30, 40 years isn't meathead shit. I'm sure you've done a lot of stuff in here and with Elite FTS over the years that they'll never publish a study on. And that sucks, because it'd be super cool if they did. But does that mean like, hey, remember when you did that back in, 1999 and it was fucking awesome? It wasn't actually awesome, because this study said that it sucked. Pretty sure it was awesome. Got to keep an open mind.
What is the best way people can go about finding you?
So I am DDT Method on essentially everything. So DDT Method or Drew Donaldson Training will pull up my YouTube channel. My YouTube is my podcast, the DDT Method Podcast, and I try to have a different expert on every single week. So this show is a massive inspiration to what I do. I will readily say that without any sort of shame whatsoever. So I try to emulate the people that I look up to, and this show is a massive inspiration to that. And that's just something where that's my passion project. And I just try to bring people on every single week. Some are peptide experts, some are bodybuilders, some are doctors, some are in the like quantum world talking about this real fringe woo-woo type. Is this science? Is this weird? Is this really cool? Is this not cool? And, some people hate those episodes, but I try to go all over the place to everything I want to learn about, because I'm just like most of the people watching this. I want to learn everything about everything because I want to be super jacked. Even at 41, I feel better and I feel like I look better, not as big as I used to be, but I'm in a better place physically and mentally and just really in every way than I ever have been. And to me, that's a testament to the things that I've learned and been able to apply. And I want to be able to give everybody else the ability to do that. I love coaching and working with clients, but if we can get everybody to the point of auto-regulation, like you were talking about, that's like making everybody the fucking Jedi master of longevity, health, biohacking, and performance enhancement. So that's kind of my big goal. On Instagram, DDT Method, I'm going to start adding more and more content to that. I also have my school group, school/DDT Method. That one is $10 a month, and I just put in tons of deep dive videos. Clearly, if anybody's hung with us till the end of this, they know that I tend to ramble quite a bit. I've turned that ability to ramble into 20, 30, and 40-minute deep dive videos all about one topic. I have it on everything from almost every peptide at this point to most of the PEDs to different energy systems, training styles, blood flow restriction training, conjugate periodization, modified conjugate periodization for the aesthetics-based athlete, all sorts of different stuff. I started putting articles in there as well too, so that's kind of like my low ticket paywall site because I still want to be accessible. And then DDT Method on Instagram is expanding. I have a couple brilliant coaches that are jumping in there that I'm going to start promoting because they're brilliant people that I've helped kind of elevate, but they're brilliant in their own right. They just don't have the platforms yet. So I'm going to start using my platform to elevate them. And it's just me trying to put out as much information as humanly possible. I'm not trying to be the best in the world at any one thing. I just kind of, I want to do what you've kind of come to do now. Like you were like one of the gods of powerlifting for the longest time, and then in business, and then in mastering like the entrepreneurship side of this industry. Now you're this conduit of information that people can trust and people can go to. And that's something that I'm trying to do now. So got a while to go.
Yeah.
I got big shoes to fill.
All right.
But information, that's what I want to bring out to people.
All right. Well, thank you. And we're done.